You're in the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
With Gene and Chris, assisted by Goggs Mackay, we're back at the Paracast. We have another special guest this week. He will join us in the next segment. In the meantime, I thought perhaps, unless my two compatriots say no, in which case I lose the vote, doesn't matter that I hold the microphone controls in my hand. Very democratic here, as they say. Talk about last week's show in relation to the fact that people always seem to have evidence, but you never see much of it. Like, for example, we were talking about some videos that Peter Davenport of the National UFO Reporting Center said he had, but they're not posted online because he feels they'll use too much bandwidth. Now, I mentioned to him that I have the bandwidth. I would host or mirror those videos if he wanted, but I never got a response. Chris, what do you think?
I'm not quite sure what to make of that, actually, Gene. I thought it was a very magnanimous thing for you to volunteer to host the video, and I don't see any reason why he wouldn't want to do that. Somebody on our forums posted some, I don't know, a bit of hearsay that they thought that somehow Peter was tied in with the NSA. I have a hard time believing that. But it kind of makes you wonder why someone would pass up an opportunity like that after professing interest in having it on the air and sort of lamenting the fact that it wasn't. It doesn't make sense.
It almost harkens back to the Marley Woods case from Ted Phillips. And if you remember the last time he was on the show, and he wants to come back again, I told him that we'd have him back on in the near future. He said he was going to put all that stuff up on a new website. So for a few weeks, the website was in an early stage of development, and then it all stopped. So we haven't seen any more information from Ted Phillips. And once again, I welcome his participation.
Right.
It's the same problem. Now, the other person who says he has evidence and we never really get to see it is, of course, your friend Ray Stanford. And you got a chance to talk to him when you were in Washington, D.C. for the citizens hearing on disclosure. You spent 2 days with Ray. And you begged him, please.
We didn't get through all his material. I was absolutely gog-smacked. No.
Actually, Goggs, you have my permission.
To smack me.
Yes, please. Just a minute. Wait.
He is really on to something. I saw some of the most amazing analytical process I've ever even heard of in ufology, or in his words, AAO-ology, which is anomalous aerial objects, his preferred term. The problem with someone like Ray is that when you have such a intricate, involved data, to just put it up there for people to scratch their heads without context, it just doesn't make sense. That's why Ray has offered to show his data to anyone with a basic science background that's interested in seeing the real thing. But you have to spend days, literally days, to understand what it is that he's doing and how he has come up what I consider to be replicated data. He's able to show in frames of his films and in other films from other people and other photographs, demonstrable, repeatable, and predictable ghost imaging, which he thinks may be tied into some sort of time compression scenario that the technology that these pilots of these craft are using. He showed me example after example of these bent wing Delta craft, a mothership type craft where these objects are docking underneath, and ghost images of the objects that you can almost predict where they're going to be based on the analysis of a particular frame or photograph. And one of the things that really totally amazed me was he uses a technique of false color and bringing the signal out of the noise, literally, of these photographs. A majority of them are actually analog photographs and not digital. Of course, it's coming across on a digital screen. But, for someone like Ray to try to put this information up online without explaining what you're looking at it would be more confusing and do more harm than good.
He can't just write it up in a paper?
It's what he's doing right now. And he's interested in scientists and physicists and optical physicists getting involved in his analytical process. He's already shown this data to some very high-powered individuals whose names would be recognized by many of the listeners here at the Paracast.
You know the names then?
Oh, I do. And I've seen the emails. One physicist called his work magnificent and claimed that Ray had given him just enough of a hint to help him tackle a major problem that he'd been dealing with, and thanked Ray for that wonderful little nugget that he needed to break through on some of his own research. So, Ray is the real deal. I don't care what anybody says. I have seen it. I do have a basic background in science. I'm able to follow a line of analytical logic. I was absolutely blown away by what I saw.
It would be worthwhile for you, maybe, Chris, to write something up for the forums, more extensive about this, at least enough to give people an idea that something really exists and it's available for people to see. And I think one of the concerns I have, of course, is that Ray Stanford is not the youngest guy on the planet. And we'd like to see him complete his work before he leaves this planet. Does he have any contingency plans for that? What happens if he's... That's
a touchy subject. Ray almost died of a heart attack about 10 years ago, just before I really met him. He does have a degraded heart because of a misdiagnosis of a heart attack that he had. This is something that I worry about. What I was wanting to do was try to get Ray's permission to film his entire presentation to me. I was there with a ton of tape, and I was ready to do the whole thing. And he said, no, he's not ready yet. So, I'm trying my best for everybody's sake, and including moving the field forward. And, he does realize that time is, that clock is ticking.
Goggs?
Yeah, well, I trust Chris. If Chris is saying, that he's seen this and, he's stated Ray's intentions, then I got to believe them. But obviously Chris knows, and I know, that isn't going to cut it with some people. And, me personally, I'm just jealous. I would like to see the stuff. And I suppose you could, looking at Ray Stanford, he has this... He's got the science background. He's really worked at this for a long time. But I'm just wondering, well, sometimes we're having a go at NIDS or Bob Bigelow, the black hole of data. But perhaps Bigelow and NIDS have the exact same argument, that the reason why they don't wish to disclose data straight away. I don't really know Ted Phillips's reluctance. I don't think he's claiming to be doing the same kind of standard of work that Ray Stanford is. But just for me, the average UFO interest person, it just seems like anyone who has the good stuff has their own reasons for not wanting to share it. And in a way, I can kind of understand it. You could make analogies with other ventures in life where you are working hard to do something, and the public at large, or a certain section of them, would be very interested, but you have your own reasons for not publishing or whatever straight away. I can totally understand that. Like, say, for instance, you could maybe are making what you think is the greatest pop song ever, and you let that slip to a few friends that are into music, and they're saying, oh, come on, just play us a few bars. And you think, well, maybe someone might steal that idea, or you just for purely artistic reasons, you don't want it released until it's ready. Most writers, most authors, artists of any kind, they don't like seeing people. You wouldn't, Da Vinci wouldn't let you see the Sistine Chapel halfway through. So I do understand that argument. It's just really frustrating being one of the guys who can't get their hands on this. As for Peter Davenport, I cannot understand at all his reluctance to allow you to post that video, mirror the site, or whatever it takes.
Coming up next, we'll have Robert Hastings. He's author of UFOs and Nukes, and he was not at the citizen hearing on disclosure. And we'll find out why and more. With Gene and Chris and Goggs, you're in
the Paracast.
The people we work with the most aren't always the people we see every day. Coworkers work on the go, different offices. Clients are spread across the country, around the globe. To work efficiently today, you need to have a stronger connection to your team, to build trust and stay focused and brainstorm. And as you know, here on my radio shows, we've got people around the world that we deal with. Well, with GoToMeeting by Citrix, your entire team is just a click away. You can share the same screen and collaborate in real time. Tell me about it, even on your iPad. Try GoToMeeting free for 30 days. For this special offer, visit gotomeeting.com. Click the Try It Free button. Use the promo code PODCAST. Remember, use the promo code PODCAST. GoToMeeting. Meeting is believing.
Friends, this is Alex Jones for MidasResources.com. For more than 15 years, I have exclusively used Midas Resources for all my precious metal needs. Whether it's bullion or collectibles you're looking for, Midas Resources is simply the best. I own my gold as a hedge against inflation. This Federal Reserve fiat currency could go the way of the Deutschmark and the Weimar Republic anytime. In these historically dangerous times, it makes sense to physically hold gold and silver. Midas already has some of the best deals in the industry. But if you give them a call and mention the radio special, they will give you a list of the day's super specials. Midas brokers are standing by to answer all your questions at 800-686-2237. They also have a lot of informative free literature explaining the opportunities and risk of holding precious metals. They are ready to answer your questions at 800-686-2237. Again, that's 800-686-2237.
What's more amazing than a Swiss Army knife? A survival business card. Its 11 functions rolled into one pocket-sized tool, including a sharp knife, a saw, a bottle opener, and a can opener, too. It even has a wrench. It lays flat, fits right in your wallet. A survival multi-tool for your wallet, leather-like sheath included, designed to be practical and built to last. Yours free. That's right, free. Claim yours right now while supplies last at freesurvivaltool.com. Again, that's freesurvivaltool.com. Bills in front of Congress right now could take away your right to keep and bear arms. If Obama has his way, all guns will be either banned, restricted, or confiscated, possibly by executive order. The best way to keep your guns is to hide them. What Obama can't find, Obama can't take away. You can protect your guns from any threat. Download our special report, How to Hide Your Guns, at GoHideYourGuns.com. Learn how to hide your guns while keeping them readily available. Get the report now before they make us take it down. On the web at GoHideYourGuns.com.
Did you know that 50% of heart attacks are brought on by infections? Did you know that hospitals are breeding grounds for antibiotic-resistant bugs like MRSA? The environment is infected with parasites, and the mild winter means ticks with Lyme disease, mosquitoes with West Nile virus, and cold and flu viruses will be on the rise. Protect yourself with nature's natural anti-parasitic, antiviral, antifungal, antibiotic, Allison, the heart of garlic. Get concentrated protection with Ali C and Ali Ban from Affinity Health Products. One capsule of Ali C equals 40 cloves of garlic or 100 garlic pills with no garlic breath. Ali Ban has Allison in spray, liquid, and cream forms with 3 times more strength than leading brands and costs less. Go to ally-c.com, spelled ALLI-C.com, or call 855-ALLISON. That's 855-255-4246. That's 855-255-4246. Protect yourself with Ali C and Ali Ban from Affinity Health Products at ally-c.com.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
We're joined by Robert Hastings. He's author of a book called UFOs and Nukes, and it's what the name implies about UFOs seen in and around nuclear weapons installations and sometimes the mischief they cause. Now, Robert, some of the people that you have brought to our attention with regard to UFOs and nukes appeared over at the citizen hearing on disclosure, but you weren't there. Why?
I have a problem with the way Steve Bassett approaches the presentation of UFO-related data in a public venue. The witnesses you just mentioned, the former Air Force missileers, 3 of whom came to me over the last 3 or 4 years and provided their stories to me before anyone else, as well as Bob Salas, who co-hosted my UFOs and Nukes press conference. All of those people are obviously quite credible. there is documentation backing up a UFO presence at nuclear weapon sites going back to the 1940s. So I don't have a problem with that. However, because Mr. Bassett refuses to vet his witnesses, something he seems to be quite adamant about, I recently listened to a March 1st, 2009 interview you and David Biedney did with him, which I think you should link for your viewers, your listeners rather. I think it's quite clear that he thinks the end justifies the means, and he can do anything he needs to or wants to when presenting this information. Consequently, some of the witnesses at the citizen hearing, in my view, were far less than credible. These are people who I've tangled with publicly and privately over the last 25 years. And I'm about to post an article at my website called Citizen Disclosure and Remarkable Revelations Undercut by Damaging Disinformation. It will be up at my website on the articles page by the time this program airs. So in short, I think it's problematic for Mr. Bassett to mingle and mix credible data with quite obviously BS, in my opinion, disinformation presented by what I consider to be the more gullible fringe of ufology. Therefore, I did not want to participate. I'm gratified. I'm thankful that the media and the public responded quite favorably, the congresspersons who heard the testimony, to what these ex-missileers, these Air Force missile launch officers and missile guard had to say. But again, I'm happy that that was the outcome, but I wasn't prepared to be involved at the outset.
Yeah. Well, I must say, having seen the entire thing, because I was helping videotape it and stream it, the absolute low point, and there were a number of them, but the absolute low point was the Honorable Paul Hellyer summing up the entire proceedings on the last day by quoting E.T. verbatim to alleged abductee Jim Sparks. I mean, I was trying to tickle my nose so I could do a but I was just really, really not happy hearing this very naive, just true believer, believe anything that you read or told. And then to have the whole thing summed up with, I think even a questionable E.T. dialogue would be actually being way too kind. To me, it was just, it really threw a pall over the whole thing. And there were quite a number of people in the audience, I could tell, that were just shaking their heads going, oh, you know, you spend 5 days. Admittedly, there were some duds in there, as you pointed out, who I'm happy to name. But to have the whole thing it just was like a bucket of ice water thrown over the whole thing in many people's. And it just drove me up the wall.
That's my point precisely. And as long as Bassett's running the show, it is going to be a circus rather than something more resembling a serious disclosure type event. Unfortunately, he seems to be oblivious to the fact that he shoots himself in the foot on a regular basis and, you know, shoots everybody else in the foot who associates with him, in my view, more often than not. I had particular problems with the witnesses who were describing, quote, information from the so-called MJ-12 document, which are overwhelmingly conclusively proved to be fraudulent. The thrust of my new article is that researchers, including myself 25 years ago, put the last nail in that coffin. MJ-12 is a hoax, whether it was a disinformation scheme or Bill Moore and crew making money, trying to make money, remains to be seen, remains to be determined, but the overwhelming forensic and anecdotal evidence confirms that MJ-12 is a hoax. And yet you have persons like Linda Howe and Richard Dolan and others who still trot this out as some sort of smoking gun evidence that the Roswell incident was real. Now, I think Roswell was real. I think if you look at the statements by retired Air Force General Arthur E. Exxon, who said that this was a recovery of a craft from space, and other credible witnesses that have been brought forth, I think quite clearly Roswell was an extraordinary event. However, that does not excuse the fact that for decades now, for those in the know, which is very distressingly a small number of people, the MJ-12 papers are totally fraudulent. And to mix that sort of nonsense with, for example, the credible testimony presented by these ex-Air Force missileers, the nuclear missile officers, is inexcusable in my view. It just muddies the water as you said, statements by others just bring the whole thing down. This could have been if Bassett had been less arrogant about his need to vet witnesses and the very real need to do that by anyone who presents this information publicly, he would have had a much more strong, perhaps memorable event. But I think, as you said, people who look at this after the fact on the web, at one website or another, and read about a summary of some of the testimony, they're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. They're going to read about the missileers saying UFOs are shutting down nuclear weapons. Then they're going to read about mental telepathy between an MJ-12 witness and an alien captured as presented by Linda Howe. And the whole thing just stinks as a consequence.
I was about to say, when you were uttering that, throwing out the baby with the bathwater, I was going to say throwing out the Bassett with the bathwater.
Good one.
Goggs, you had a comment.
Yes, Robert, I'm pleased to hear that the decisions why you wanted to stay away from the citizens' hearing. My point is quite simply, aren't all UFO conferences and events of this kind or any kind, they're always marred by non-credible speakers, the woo-woo crowd, the Pleiadian believers and whatever. And my question stroke point, I suppose, is do we just stay away totally because of that, the non-credible element, or do we have to appear to make sure that the side of the credible researcher is shown and that the public don't only get to see the non-credible ones?
Well, your point is absolutely correct. I think in the 31 years that I've been on the college lecture circuit, where I am the only speaker, during that same period I've spoken at precisely 3 conferences, simply because I did not want my research to be associated with other claims that I consider less than credible. But you're correct. This sort of phenomenon, both the good and the bad, the credible and the ridiculous, are all mixed up into this mess called ufology.
We have to do the break now, then we'll continue with that, Robert, okay? We have Robert Hastings joining Gene and Chris and Goggs. You're in
the Paracast.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
If you want to get your website online and you need reliable service, first-class service at the lowest possible price, there's only one place to go. Well, DreamHost has a special promotion with our show where they'll offer you unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, one-click web apps such as WordPress, 24/7 support. You can save over $55. You want to know how? Go to dreamhost.com/radio, dreamhost.com/radio. Whether it's personal mail, whether it's business email, you want reliable, dependable delivery, freedom from spam, freedom from viruses. Well, Polaris Mail offers professional email hosting services for your personal or small business use. Each account uses 25 gigabytes of storage, an easy-to-use webmail interface, and full mobile sync. Sign up today for a 30-day free trial at polarismail.com, polarismail.com.
If you're going to have a bunker, why not have an ultimate bunker? In case of pandemic outbreak, civil unrest, biological or nuclear fallout, or EMP attacks, stay safe in your own ultimate bunker. Built for lasting security for any need or budget. Manufactured in Salt Lake City, Utah, each ultimate bunker includes free food storage and all the comforts of home. Learn more at ultimatebunker.com. That's ultimatebunker.com. Or call 801-661-3900. Ultimate Bunker. You can't do better than the ultimate.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
The 9th Annual Health Freedom Expo returns June 7th through June 9th at the Schaumburg Convention Center in Schaumburg, Illinois, featuring over 75 world-renowned doctors, activists, and experts. Meet Dr. Joel Wallach, author of Dead Doctors Don't Lie, actress and activist Daryl Hannah, famed Dr. Patch Adams, women's health expert Dr. Joan Borisenko, GMO activist Jeffrey Smith, and renowned natural health doctor Dr. Joseph Mercola. Sample delicious healthy foods, watch award-winning documentaries, attend exciting panel discussions, discover the latest natural health products, and be sure to check out the expo hall filled with 200 exhibitors. Don't forget about the new interactive pavilions and receive free screenings. It's all here under one roof for only $20 a day or $45 for the entire 3-day weekend. It costs less than a doctor's visit. But hurry, tickets are going fast. For tickets and info, visit healthfreedomexpo.com or call 888-658-3972. The Health Freedom Expo, your one source for total natural health solutions.
Hello?
Congratulations.
For what?
For losing all that weight. How'd you do it so fast?
ASAP.
ASAP what? What's that mean?
Are you ready to get as skinny as possible, as soon as possible, as simple as possible, and as sexy as possible?
I'm listening.
Then get with the ASAP program. It's real and it works. No smooth talk, no slick advertising, and no exaggerated claims of success.
I've got to know more.
Welcome to ASAP, as slim as possible. Whether you have 10, 20, or 50 pounds to lose, ASAP is your weight loss answer. ASAP targets the abnormal fat reserves and makes them available to be burned as fuel and contains no caffeine or hormones. Order ASAP at wholesale prices or join the team to share the business with others. Visit GCNteam.com or call 877-878-4203. GCNteam.com or call 877-878-4203. Lose weight and look great with ASAP, as slim as possible.
Hi, this is Don Ecker, and you are tuned into the Paracast. Let me tell you what, you're going to hear stuff here that you probably won't hear anywhere else. Hear that, George Snorri?
With Gene and Chris, assisted by Goggs Mackay, we have Robert Hastings, author of UFOs and Nukes. Right now we're talking about, influenced by the citizen hearing on disclosure, the fact that there are so many ways of polluting the UFO field. And I wonder here, doesn't the fact that so many good people, good, honest people with lots of information appear at events where less acceptable people are allowed to show up, doesn't that just advance the agenda of someone like a Stephen Bassett? I mean, if Stanton Friedman and Kevin Randall and all the rest of the people said, no, we're not doing it unless you exclude these people, if that doesn't happen, it's just going to go on.
Well, again, I'm an outsider looking in. I don't think I can influence the course of events, and so I'm not going to even try. You mentioned Stanton Friedman. Stan Friedman has done excellent work in the field of ufology. Unfortunately, he's one of those people who has been duped, in my view, by the perpetrators of the MJ-12 hoax. He's never going to admit that. I talked to him at length one-on-one at a conference in Brazil in 2009, and he may have a different memory of it, but my memory was he conceded to me personally that there's really no credible evidence, or there's no verifiable way of documenting any of these so-called MJ-12 papers. He can advance, others can advance arguments for their legitimacy, but they all can be explained away with alternate scenarios that point toward a disinformational scheme or just an outright hoax. So I don't think that he'll ever have that conversation publicly. He won't acknowledge that, which is his prerogative. Kevin Randall, is one of the chief people who helped debunk MJ-12 in the article that I'm posting at my website. Again, it should be up by the time this interview airs. I mentioned Randall by name and others, Barry Greenwood, the late Bob Todd, Brad Sparks, and myself, people who found just irrefutable smoking gun evidence of the fraudulent nature of the MJ-12 papers. Again, there are people like Linda Howe, who unfortunately was the first person to widely disseminate this crap. She was so duped by Richard Doty and a man named Bob Collins, AFOSI, Air Force Office of Special Investigations at Kirtland Air Force Base. She has never come to the surface since then. She's just gone further and further down the slippery slope, believing virtually everything she's told by anyone who utters the word MJ-12 and says that he has a knowledge of it. She's just a sucker for that, and it's unfortunate.
Now, when you talk about people like Robert Collins and also Richard Doty, they were genuinely in the military, and you wonder why their superiors haven't simply told them to stop this nonsense.
Well, on the other hand, it can be argued that what they were doing was under orders. I am of the opinion that this was a disinformation scheme, not a hoax, and therefore, in fact, Richard Doty, as recently as 2009, I believe, we had a heated email exchange, and he said to me, everything I did under orders. And I think he's telling the truth, in my view. There is substantial evidence throughout the years of disinformational attempts to try to minimize the public's knowledge of the government's interest in UFOs, sleights of hand, as it were. The classic case being the closure of Project Blue Book. With great fanfare, the public was told, hey, the Air Force, after 22 years, found no evidence UFOs exist, and it's getting out of the UFO investigations business. The media bought it, some number of the public bought it. Years later, through the Freedom of Information Act, documents surfaced confirming, there's one called the Bollinger Memo, in particular saying that national security-related UFO incidents were never directed to Blue Book, or at least not systematically directed to Blue Book, and that other groups within the U.S. military were set up to investigate national security-related cases. So the public was told, look over here, not over there. Look over at the closure of Project Blue Book. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, out of public view, we're continuing our investigations of UFO incursions at missile sites, for example. The Office of Special Investigations, which a number of my ex-Missileer sources refer to, say they were interviewed or debriefed by agents from that office.
Now, interesting that you sent a link to me, Robert, before we did this show. And the reason I bring it up is because we now have all these stories about governments gone amok, about the U.S. government, about the IRS scandal, so-called scandal, going after conservative political action groups who wanted to be given status as nonprofits, about the issue with regard to sending subpoena out secretly to retrieve telephone logs from the AP because of a possible security leak, all this stuff about government gone amok. And then you send me a story here called How UFO Believers Make Our Government More Transparent. It almost sounds like it argues against that. What's this article about, Robert?
Well, I've only read it once, and then I sent it out. It's less than 12 hours old at this point. I don't even remember the name of the reporter who wrote it, but basically it was sort of a superficial and not very entirely accurate, at least, summary of Freedom of Information requests relating to UFO documents. The point the reporter was trying to make was that even though it's considered a taboo subject or off-the-wall subject, the fact that UFO researchers have spearheaded the release of government documents on UFOs has allowed other avenues, other documents on other topics, other subject matter to be released as a result of these ongoing efforts by UFO researchers. What the article doesn't say is that, again, we're into this sleight of hand mode where it's been established that the Air Force, let's say, and the CIA selectively release the documents they want to release. The smoking gun documents, the ones that are incriminating, the ones that don't parrot the official line that the government is not interested in UFOs, never see the light of day. They are leaked from time to time. Or peripherally, some reference to the smoking gun documents appear in another document that is released. To cite some examples, in the late 70s, various researchers filed suit with the CIA for its release of UFO documents. There were about 1,000 pages ultimately released at a classification level of secret or lower. Years later, Stanton Friedman accessed an NSA, national security document, through the FOIA that referenced a top secret or a number of top secret CIA UFO documents that the agency had shared with NSA. And so, quite clearly, CIA had top secret documents on UFOs that they did not hint existed. They did not certainly release to these researchers in the 70s. When Friedman filed FOIAs to get those top secret CIA UFO documents, they were basically all redacted. They were virtually worthless because all the material had been censored. So that's the kind of sleight of hand game that the reporter writing this article either was unaware of or chose not to mention in her article.
I would assume in most cases when you have articles like this, the person who wrote it really doesn't know anything more than they learned with very brief research. And that's it. That's exactly it.
They have deadlines. They have X amount of hours to do a given story. Then it's on to the next story. So with rare exceptions, the average reporter, even for the premier news organizations in the U.S., really don't have a good sense of the things that we're discussing here today.
We don't have much investigative journalism either. I mean, I read stories here where people will write up a report and there are critical points that should be mentioned in point of reference to that story. Information that we used to get from the morgue at a newspaper, and they don't look it up online or in their own newspaper's records that either contradict what they're saying or provide a proper reference. There's no frame of reference. Everything exists as a vacuum. So that story is a vacuum.
Part of the problem is the average person may be interested in UFOs, but they've got their day-to-day concerns, to feed their family and so on and so forth. And the amount of time they have to devote to researching this topic is minimal. And also with the Internet, you now have an overwhelming glut of information that's accessible at your fingertips. But, systematically sorting through it and separating the wheat from the chaff, the good articles from the nonsense, is a monumental task. So that is not helpful as well.
We have Robert Hastings. His book is called UFOs and Nukes, subtitled Extraordinary Encounters at Nuclear Weapons Sites, and we'll get into his latest information and your questions, Paracast listeners, in just a moment. Goggs Mackay joins our panel with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Is there a secret UFO agenda? Do strange creatures from the darkest corners of the mind roam the earth? Is there evidence for mind control, time travel, or devious government conspiracies? Find out the inside scoop on the latest conspiracies, paranormal activity, and Fortean phenomena when you subscribe to Tim Beckley's Conspiracy Journal. It's jam-packed with stories, special book and DVD promotions, and the best news, it's absolutely free, sent right to your mailbox. Plus, a bonus free email newsletter sent out every Friday. Simply send an email with your name and address to Mr. UFO at webtv.net. That's Mr. UFO at webtv.net. Find out what they don't want you to know.
The government's Department of Homeland Security is buying up loads of ammo. At the same time, they're restricting civilians' rights to own and purchase firearms. Can you put two and two together? Infidel Body Armor can stop every round, including hollow points and .308 sniper rounds, is reasonably priced and fully legal. But for how long? Go to InfidelBodyArmor.com, spelled INFIDEL bodyarmor.com. Infidel Body Armor. Just won't quit.
We the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit, then carting to a private bank, having it lent back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Hi, Ted Anderson. I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
It's time to get real. It's time to prepare. Economic collapse, social unrest, natural disasters, government takeover, UN takeover. Are you ready? Ready? Get ready at the Social Prepper Trade Show in Dalton, Georgia, June 6th, 7th, and 8th. 3 massive days to learn self-reliance and emergency preparedness. Exhibitors ranging from survival, solar, power, food, protection, guns, ammo, disaster preparation products, hunting, and much more. Seminars by Dr. Wallach, Robert Henry, Raymond Blake Hogshead, Trish Deere, Sandy Hall, Rick Austin, Survivor Jane, and more of our nation's experts on survival and preparedness. Don't miss the Social Prepper Trade Show, June 6th through 8th, Dalton, Georgia. For discount tickets, prize raffle, and info, go to socialprepper.com. Enter code GCN for 50% online ticket discount purchase. The Social Prepper Trade Show, presented in part by GCN.
A little over a year ago, I began to do a lot of research into why, even though I had a pretty good-sized meal, that I was still starving. And my research led me to a well-known fact that most of the soils that we grow our crops on here in the United States and across the industrialized world are almost completely depleted of almost all of the key minerals and trace elements that our bodies need to rebuild themselves, fight off cancer, and be healthy. I then searched out the best vitamin and mineral company out there and discovered Youngevity. The Youngevity products are designed to give you the real nutrition you need, and once you've got that, you don't have to eat as much to be satisfied. I've lost 37 pounds in 2 months, simply getting the vitamins and minerals I need. Check it out for yourself. It's incredible. Go to InfoWarsTeam.com today and order your first canister of Beyond Tangy Tangerine Complete Multivitamin Mineral Complex Dietary Supplement. That's InfoWarsTeam.com.
This is Leslie Kane, and I'm with the Coalition for Freedom of Information, and you are listening to the Paracast.
With Goggs Mackay on the panel and Gene and Chris on the Paracast, we welcome back Robert Hastings. It's been roughly 2 years since his last appearance on the Paracast, and I think for people who haven't heard him before, let's quickly recap the core of your interest and look at some of the latest information here. So you focus primarily on UFOs seen in and around nuclear weapons installations. That's correct.
Yes. My father was career Air Force, and in 1966-67, he was stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana. We lived there for less than a year. However, it just coincidentally coincided with a period of high UFO activity out at the nuclear weapons sites. My dad got wind of it through the rumor mill. He worked at a place called the Sage Building. It housed, among other things, the world's most advanced computer-assisted radar system at that time in the late 60s. There were reports by the military controllers of UFOs maneuvering around the missile sites. I independently, as a junior in high school, 16, 17 years old, worked 3 nights a week at the base air traffic control tower. After several months of having worked there, I made the acquaintance of one of the FAA controllers, and he was quite generous with his time in terms of explaining to me how radar worked and so on. One night I walked through what's called RAPCON, Radar Approach and Control, dark room with several radar screens with guys hunched over them in the dark. Walked through, pushing a broom, emptying trash cans, and the same gentleman kind of motioned me over to a scope and said, we're tracking UFOs or unknowns or unidentified targets, whatever term he used. It was clear to me that he was talking about UFOs. So I got all excited and started peppering him with questions. And he kind of the look on his face was like, oh, crap, I've said too much. So he told me to come back later. And when I came back later and cleaned up, I raised the topic again. He didn't want to talk about it. The next time I was there, about 3 days later, I caught him in the break room and I asked him, what was that the other night? And he didn't want to talk about it. So I let it go. But it made a memorable impression on me. And by the time I graduated from college in 72 and did a year of graduate school in 73, I started looking for material on nuclear weapons related UFO activity, and lo and behold, I found an article in the December 1966 issue of Saturday Evening Post written by Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was the Blue Book project advisor, civilian advisor, and astronomer, in which he was basically discussing UFO activity at Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota in August of '66, where UFOs had come in and hovered around those nukes. And when I saw that, I was off and running. It dawned on me that what I had heard from my dad at Malmstrom back in '67 had a basis, in fact. And shortly thereafter, researcher Raymond Fowler, who was a Minuteman missile system contractor for Sylvania Corporation, published a book called UFOs Interplanetary Visitors. In it, he referenced UFO activity at Malmstrom in '66 and '67, again corroborating what I had been told and what my father had heard. So that's what began my interest in this topic. I, at this point, have interviewed over 140 U.S. military veterans who were involved in incidents from the late 40s to last fall, who were involved in incidents or aware of incidents involving UFO incursions at missile sites, weapons storage areas, nuclear bomb test sites, nuclear laboratories such as Los Alamos and Sandia. So it's real, it's important, and it's ongoing.
Goggs, do you want to put it in a comment?
Yeah, Robert, just a quick one here. The interest apparently shown by UFOs in nuclear bases, I wonder, have you ever heard during your research of any hint or whatever if the UFOs have ever shown any interest in biological or chemical kind of weapons type places, research places? Is it all nuclear?
I'm asked that question from time to time. I can't honestly address it knowledgeably. It wouldn't surprise me, but I couldn't point to any specific information, credible, verifiable information that has come my way.
Sorry, no, you carry on, Robert. I do have another point, but I'll continue, please.
I was just going to say, to finish a thought, when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, there was a period in the early 90s where Western researchers and journalists were able to access previously classified, in fact, still classified, KGB and Ministry of Defense documents. In particular, journalist George Knapp literally smuggled some documents out of Russia in the early 90s relating to UFO activity at Soviet missile sites. There were also interviews conducted by Knapp and others with former Soviet military personnel alluding to these incidents. So whoever is in the UFOs, whatever their game plan is, part of it involved monitoring and tampering with both American and Russian nuclear weapons.
Now, what I always wonder about when we talk about this issue about tampering with our weapons, that seems to show either a hostile motive on the part of whoever or whatever is piloting UFOs, or some intent to kind of keep us down, prevent us from expanding our nuclear weapons development. I mean, what's the motive behind this?
I can think of a third option. You may have benevolent intentions, whereby an advanced race is monitoring a very primitive race, us, who now have, for the first time in our history, weapons that can actually end our civilization if they're used in large numbers. What I tell my lecture audiences, I've spoken at over 500 schools since 1981, is this. Based on the available data, my opinion is that whoever they are wagging a finger at us and the Russians and the other nuclear powers and attempting to tell us that we're playing with fire. So I take a more positive look at the situation, but I quickly tell my lecture audiences, I don't have the inside story on this. No one does. Maybe the folks at the Pentagon and the CIA and the Kremlin don't even know. So we have to look at the whole range of options to account for what has been reported by these ex-military people. And if you look at the other end of the spectrum, if indeed these are extraterrestrial visitors, there could be ill intent toward humankind. There may be designs on our planet. They may intend some invasion at some point in time, and they simply don't want to inherit a radioactive husk. Therefore, they are attempting to, as you said, dissuade us or shut down our ability to use nuclear weapons. Now, I personally do not believe that is the case. I personally am inclined to think that you have, as I said, an advanced race who seemingly has our best interests at heart and is just planning to step in on a limited on-again, off-again basis, to keep us from making a fatal mistake and launching a major nuclear war.
One thing that I've often wondered about, Robert, and I recall reading your book but not seeing information that verifies this, but have these objects ever showed up and actually changed telemetry data on let's say a missile site, changed the actual target, let's say?
What I have is secondhand information that target tapes have been erased, meaning that even if a missile was launched, it could not have hit its designated target. The persons who've told me that were not directly involved in the missile maintenance or targeting groups who would have discovered that if indeed it did take place. But they were missile launch officers who heard through the grapevine within, the Missileer group. You have launch officers, you have maintenance personnel, and you have targeting personnel, and there is some bleed over from group to group in terms of what's being reported, whether it's officially or via the rumor mill. And so I have heard on, I think, 2 occasions, indirect references to when the missile targeting guys went in, they found that the targeting codes had been scrambled. What I have as firsthand testimony from a number of people at Malmstrom, Minot, Ellsworth Air Force Base, F.E. Waring, is that missiles dropped offline, and when they were inspected, it was found that their GNC, the guidance and control systems, were scrambled. In other words, even if they had been launched, they could not have, found their targets. But there was no specific reference within the guidance system to the targeting tapes from these firsthand witnesses.
Just want to tell our listeners that next week on the Paracast, we'll be featuring the return of Leslie Kean, and she's going to bring with her to the second half of the show Charles Halt, of course, one of the figures in the Rendlesham UFO case. Leslie Kean was also not present nor invited to the citizen hearing on disclosure. So you look at the esteemed people who didn't go there, and that brings up lots of interesting reasons, lots of interesting things to talk about. Leslie Kean, Charles Halt on next week's episode. As always, if you have a comment or question, write us, news@theparacast.com, news@theparacast.com. We have Goggs Mackay, our guest panelist. Our main guest this week is Robert Hastings. He's author of a book called UFOs and Nukes. And you're on with Gene and Chris because you're in
the Paracast.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. If you'd like to listen to GCN programs on the go, I have great news. GCN has created a Droid and iPhone application, and it's free. Just as easy as going to GCNlive.com, click on the banner, and download. Before you know it, you'll be listening to your favorite hard-hitting GCN shows, live or on demand, right on your Droid or iPhone, 24/7 and on the go. So download the Droid and iPhone app free by clicking on the banner at GCNlive.com. Thanks again for listening to GCNlive.com. Again, that's GCNlive.com. Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
Time and time again.
You need to come here and help us. We need assistance, please.
Those we should be able to depend on let us down.
Federal and state and local officials saying help is on the way. Well, the folks here in Bell Harbor say, show me.
Don't depend on the government to save you. Take action now so that you're prepared for the next disaster with MyPatriotSupply.com. Get the best prices on storable food, non-GMO seeds, water filtration devices, home canning equipment, survival and self-reliance books, and more at MyPatriotSupply.com. Call 866-229-0927.
We are hurting down here, and we need help
Immediately.
Before it's time to survive, it's time to prepare. MyPatriotSupply.com. MyPatriotSupply.com.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
With Gene and Chris and our panelist Goggs Mackay, we have Robert Hastings, author of UFOs and Nukes. Chris is up next with questions.
Yeah, Robert, you mentioned in the previous segment that, George Knapp was able to confirm and actually smuggle documents back from the Soviet Union in the early 90s that indicate that it's not only a U.S. problem on missile sites, but also the Soviet Union has had similar types of events. To what extent, I'm sure we don't really fully know. But how about China? Or some of the other nuclear powers? Do we have any smoking gun evidence that China or maybe French nuclear testing out in the South Pacific, let's say in the 50s and into the 60s, do we have any other international type cases?
Well, let's look at the French cases first. Let me preface my remarks by saying that I have largely focused on both the U.S. and the former Soviet Union, so my knowledge of what I'm about to say is peripheral and certainly does not involve direct research. But there are credible information available on the internet that I found indicating that on at least 3 occasions, UFO activity was observed by French nuclear technicians testing nuclear weapons in French Polynesia in the 1960s. And I can't pull the gentleman's name off the top of my head, but his credentials have been verified. He was part of the French nuclear testing program. China, which obviously is a major player in the world, and even, well, it was less so in the 60s, but they did have nuclear weapons from 1964 on. One would assume, and I am quite convinced that there was indeed UFO monitoring, perhaps even tampering with Chinese nuclear weapons. But it's such a closed society. It is so difficult to get information even today about military affairs that I have not found anything, despite my many efforts to find credible information out of China. I haven't. On the other hand, I believe India tested its first weapon in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken, and the Pakistanis in the late 90s. And I'm aware of what I consider to be credible reports online relating to UFO sightings around the test areas in both India and Pakistan. They are arch enemies because of the Hindu-Muslim, rivalry, or whatever the word would be. And so, unfortunately, if there's going to be a flashpoint, the odds of having a major U.S.-Russian exchange, at least at this point in time, have been reduced significantly. But other areas of the world, like the Pakistani Indian area, that may well flare up at some point in time, and they both have nukes. So I would assume that there's some interest on the part of whoever are flying the disc-shaped craft that have been reported at American and Russian sites.
India and Pakistan actually have been in a undeclared state of war since the Kashmir, conflict started 35, 40 years ago. I think even longer, closer to 50 years. And it would be interesting to get more information on some of the UFO sightings that have been seen flying down this valley that lies between these two opposing forces up there. That's one area that has had recently, in the last, I think, 3 or 4 years, some pretty interesting UFO reports.
I've got a quick point and a question. The quick point is we were talking about possible motives for the interference at nuclear facilities. I'd wondered, Robert kind of touched on this, I'd wondered if it was a possible warning stroke kind of monitoring about the environmental side of things, and perhaps Robert can answer whether there's been any UFO interest over nuclear waste storage facilities, those ones that are separate from, like active facilities. And another question I had is actually, we're hearing about interference of missiles, and for instance, in the Rendlesham case, supposedly there was a quote, the ordnance was adversely affected. I wonder, more specifically than that and more scientifically than that, does Robert know of any actual changes in the nuclear material itself, the actual isotopes? Has there been any detected change in half-life or the decay series elements of anything like that, a kind of a chemical or physical change in the actual nuclear material? Has there ever been any information about that?
Let me hopefully remember all of those various questions, taking them one at a time. I have heard rumors from a couple of my ex-military sources about rumors they had heard within their squadrons about when the warheads were inspected that the plutonium had found to have been adversely affected. In other words, it would not have allowed for a nuclear detonation. I have to say that evidence or those anecdotal statements to me, I don't consider as credible without getting into all the details. They weren't really detailed. They weren't really first-hand accounts. They were just rumors floating around. I'm not aware of, although I'm sure there have been, UFO activity at nuclear storage facilities. I will, however, say that there is a persistent story. In fact, it's been reported in both the Ukrainian and the Russian press in the early 90s that when the Chernobyl nuclear reactor exploded in April 1986, among the persons on scene within hours were Soviet radiation monitoring teams. Apparently, according to these articles in both the Russian and Ukrainian media in the early 90s, some of the people, or at least one of the people assigned to one of these teams, has gone on the record as saying that they had already taken radiation readings, which were just ridiculously high. Then this brass-colored sphere appeared above the reactor and allegedly sent down 2 crimson-colored beams into the reactor. This gentleman alleges that this object was there for some 3 to 5 minutes before racing away. He further said in these articles that when they took their next reading of the ambient radiation, it was, I believe, reduced by 2/3 or 3/4. I'd have to look at the appendix in my book to get the details, but significantly reduced. Now, assuming, one, that this is accurate reporting, and that this indeed occurred, I don't think there's any known scientific explanation for radioactive decay being artificially reduced to such a dramatic degree in a short period of time. I'm unaware of any way that we can do that, or whether it's even considered theoretically possible. But that was the report. Before we get too further along the road here, let me mention something about Rendlesham Forest. In my book, devote a whole chapter to the incidents in December of 1980 at Rendlesham Forest and then also RAF Bentwaters, where at that time it was leased by the U.S. Air Force. They had the largest nuclear weapons depot in Western Europe at RAF Bentwaters. Based on information I have from my sources, it contained tactical nuclear bombs, that is, battlefield nukes that would be delivered to mainland Europe. In the case of Soviet invasion of Western Europe, jet fighters would fly these tactical nukes and hope to blunt a Soviet offensive. I have witnesses who have said, including Colonel Halt, who said he heard on the radio chatter from guards at the weapons storage area of a UFO hovering over that site, sending down beams of light into it. Now, I interviewed him in 2006. He had already made statements to that effect on the program Unsolved Mysteries in 1991. I asked him about that at length in my taped interview. He declined to answer specific questions confirming the presence of nuclear weapons because that's official Air Force policy. You don't confirm or deny the presence of locations of weapons. But he did confirm that he heard radio chatter while he was out in the farmer's field next to the woods. Most people know that story, tromping around looking at strange lights in Rendlesham Forest. He did confirm to me on this audio tape conversation that he did hear radio chatter, very excited chatter by guards at the weapons storage area of a UFO sending down beams of light into it. Nearly a decade prior to my conversation with Colonel Holt, I interviewed another retired Air Force colonel. I am not at liberty to identify him. I know who he is. I know his credentials. He was very, very high up in the NATO nuclear weapons security apparatus.
We have Robert Hastings joining us, and he'll give you the rest of that answer in our next segment. With Goggs Mackay, Gene Steinberg, Chris O'Brien, you're in
the Paracast.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors, classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
Hi, this is Gary Cooper with Midas Resources Gold and Silver. Don't be surprised when the global elite confiscates money from your bank account one day. They have already very clearly telling you that they're going to do it. With what just happened in Cyprus serving as a blueprint for future bank bailouts, if you are concerned about keeping your money, why not consider storing your wealth in gold and silver? Call me, Gary Cooper, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 130. Together we'll discuss your options of buying gold and silver. Again, the global elite have plans for your money, and it doesn't include you. So call me, Gary Cooper, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 130, and I will send you a booklet with 10 reasons why gold and silver could be right for you. Again, don't get caught with money in your account when the next bank bailout hits. Call me, Gary Cooper, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 130.
What's safer and cheaper than prescription drugs?
Glad you asked. The answer is Renovation Teas. Herbal remedies are much safer and much cheaper than prescription drugs. Taste great, and most importantly, herbal teas are effective and non-addictive. Renovation Tea is especially unique, and here's why. We spent years researching herbs and their beneficial properties. Renovation Teas uses only 100% organic, fair trade herbs. Our teas are blended towards specific ailments and health conditions, such as diabetes, blood pressure, anxiety, libido, detox, and much more. All Renovation Teas are formulated and hand-filled in Arkansas. Take care of yourself naturally, the way Mother Nature intended. Order Renovation Teas at renovationtea.com or call 870-784-3121. That's 870-784-3121. Renovation Teas. Renovate your health, one bag at a time.
We travel so much, and having a fake TV, well, it gives added peace of mind.
Burglars look for houses that appear to be easy targets. But fake TV can fool even professional burglars into thinking someone is home watching television.
As a recent widow living alone, it gives me great peace of mind to set my fake TV near a window and know that passing motorists and pedestrians will think someone is home watching TV when I'm actually away from home.
Fake TV easily plugs into any outlet, just like a light on a timer.
And they're so easy to use. You just plug them in and they're ready to go. Plus, they're so affordable that we have one upstairs and downstairs.
Fake TV is only $29.95 with free shipping. Order your fake TV by calling 877-5-FAKE-TV or go to faketv.com. That's 877-532-5388 or faketv.com. Fake TV, the burglar deterrent.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
Gene, Chris, and Goggs talking to Robert Hastings, author of UFOs and Nukes. He was talking about more of his evidence with regard to UFOs at nuclear installations and everything, and we had to break up that answer, which now, Robert, you can finish.
In 1994 in Albuquerque, I interviewed a retired Air Force colonel who was previously attached to the NATO nuclear weapons security group at a very high level, and he confirmed to me, much to my surprise, that in fact, just days after this object apparently hovered over the RAF Bentwaters nuclear weapons storage area, sending down beams of light into it, 2 tactical nukes, this colonel said, were loaded aboard a C-5A aircraft and flown to Kirtland Air Force Base, where there is a nuclear weapons analysis laboratory, and they were in fact analyzed. Now, this gentleman claimed to have read a report detailing all of that. When I asked him what the findings of the inquiry, the investigation of the weapons were, he claimed that that information was not in the report that he read, and therefore does not know the outcome of that. But at the very least, it appears that the Air Force took that situation seriously enough to remove 2 of these nukes. How they determine which ones to remove from which bunker, there are multiple bunkers at the weapons storage area, I don't really know. Let me quickly summarize my knowledge of the Rendlesham Forest Bentwaters case by saying that in 2007, I personally tracked down the 2 Air Force air traffic controllers who were on duty that week during all of that activity. No one else in the last 30-something years ever took the initiative to do that. I located them, identified them, Ike Barker and Jim Carey. I conducted audio tape interviews with them, and what they each told me independently was they tracked a bona fide UFO the night that Colonel Halt was in the woods. This is important because skeptics have continually said, no, they were just looking at this lighthouse through the woods, or, some such prosaic explanation for what Halt and the others out there in the woods reported. What these 2 air traffic controllers told me was that they tracked an object that covered 120 miles in 8 seconds. And one of the controllers remembers that during that period when they were watching this object on radar, it did a 90-degree right-angle turn. Moreover, one of the controllers who looked up from the scope and out the window said he saw at the moment when this object hovered momentarily, he looked out and saw hovering over the base water tower a glowing orange sphere. And he said that it was there for just 2 or 3 seconds and then zipped off to the southwest, just to the west of the weapons storage area. So the skeptics, the debunkers, can say all they want about this not being a UFO, that it simply was a lighthouse, but the 2 guys who were monitoring their air traffic control scope that night said that they tracked a bona fide UFO that one of them saw out the window, one of them said did a 90-degree turn, and it apparently was quite near the weapons storage area when it left the vicinity.
Goggs, you had a question.
Yeah, very quick one, Robert. Have you had any personal UFO experiences?
I have seen, beginning in 1970, and I think the last one was 2001, I've seen 6 separate objects, one at a time, some in daylight, some in the evening, quite clearly anomalous aerial objects. They were not aircraft. The daylight sightings involved a silver cigar with no tail fins, no markings of any kind. It was not a cruise missile. It was like, if you can imagine, a cigar with, tapered tips, clearly moving through the sky north of Albuquerque in daylight. I've also seen a disc in broad daylight near my farm, near Chicago, back in the mid-70s. I've seen a similar disc in southwestern New Mexico in broad daylight, maneuvering through the sky. I've also seen other objects that were luminous plasma balls, performing maneuvers that no aircraft on Earth can do. And quite clearly, we're not ball lightning or anything like that. So aside from those 6 sightings, no, I can't say that I've had a personal UFO experience.
At least you had 6 sightings. I've had none. I have a fast question to ask before we go on, and we do have a lot of listener questions, as you know, Robert, and that is, okay, we have all these cases of UFOs in and around nuclear installations, but you think if they were really concerned about our nuclear program, they'd be around all the time, not just here and there?
Well, 2 points come to mind. First, I would say my research is just scratching the surface. I think for every case that I know about, there's probably 100 or 1,000, who knows, cases over the last 70 years that I'll never know about because the witnesses haven't come forward to me, or I haven't stumbled upon them, or the documents will be hidden in perpetuity. Let's just say that, I went up to Montana last fall in October, and all I did was have to go to the Fergus County Sheriff's Department, look through their blotter, their report record, and I found 6 UFO reports in the September timeframe near nuclear weapon sites in Montana. This was the fall of 2012. I subsequently interviewed one of the eyewitnesses, a civilian named Jennifer Styler. I'd have to look at my notes. And she said she saw 2 boomerang-shaped craft approximately halfway between a missile site called O3 and her home southwest of that site. And September, I think it was 19th of 2012. So it's ongoing. Addressing your larger question, here is what I think is going on. Whoever these guys are, and I think it's multiple ET races, in my view, that are now interacting with humankind at this point in our history. They probably have been around for thousands of years, but let's just talk post-World War II. There's so much circumstantial evidence that the UFO activity just took a dramatic upswing at the precise time that we invented and began to test and began to employ nuclear weapons. That is just so well established. I don't think it's a coincidence. Now, why, I have been asked, don't they just sit down on the White House lawn and in the Kremlin courtyard and make clear to everyone they're real, they're here, and get out and say, get ready your nukes? Why don't they address this directly face-to-face with our leaders in the nuclear powers? My view is that because they intend some contact with us in the future, the time has not yet arrived where they plan to openly reveal themselves to us, but they have had to, probably against their will or not by intention, had to start interfering with our nuclear weapons because there was a very great potential during the Cold War era for massive destruction planetary-wide. And I think what they've done is interjected themselves in an ongoing but stealthy fashion. So the public as a whole does not know this is really going on, but the military leaders in both the nuclear powers sure as hell do. And therefore, they can make a point, to the Pentagon and the Russian military leaders, hey, we're monitoring your nukes. We can shut them down if we want. And yet the public at the same time worldwide doesn't really have a sense that this is going on because, the vast majority of the planet does not know anything about what I've discussed, what I've researched. So the secret is still secret for the vast majority of humans.
Well, I guess then that ET, whoever, whatever it might be, does not have a prime directive not to interfere. And just parenthetically, I'll mention this, but you can answer in our next segment. Do we see this in North Korea, which has nuclear ambitions? What about Iran? And their nuclear ambitions, are the UFOs hanging around there too? We have Robert Hastings joining us with Goggs Mackay, Gene Steinberg, Chris O'Brien. You're in
the Paracast.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKE soft.com. lemkesoft.com. LEMKE soft.com.
There's been a disaster, and most of you don't even realize the terrible danger we're in. Alex Jones has warned you for years to get a good food storage. We thought the danger was drought, or food delivered to our gas tanks, or our food sold to other countries.
or food so expensive that only those on food stamps and welfare could afford it. But we have just experienced the most effective way to lose your freedom, liberty, and security without even a fight: government regulation. After a 160-year tradition of self-reliance, the do-it-yourself and charitable Mormon food storage canneries in half the country are forced to shut down due to excessive government regulations. Grow your own food, more regulations. If you've ever been warned to get food while you can, this is it. Call 800-409-5633 or on the web, efoodsdirect.com/Alex. That's 800-409-5633 or on the web, efoodsdirect.com/Alex.
Imagine waking one morning only to find your family shivering in the dark because you couldn't afford to pay your electric bill. That's closer than you think. You probably haven't heard about this yet because the liberal media has been suppressing what is fast becoming the most shocking news story of 2012. Obama's secret war on coal that could increase your already high power bill as much as 400% in coming months. As shocking as it sounds, it may well be just a matter of time before the lights start going out across America. But here's some good news. There's an underground video at exposed123.com that thousands of smart patriots have used to end their slavery to the corrupt electricity monopoly. The video at exposed123.com has already been banned by Google, and the liberal media is doing everything in its power to take it down and keep America in the dark. So watch it now at exposed123.com before it's too late. Again, that's exposed123.com.
This message dares all fish oil consumers. Yes, many people now take fish oil supplements, but the makers of K48 Plus want you to know it's not what you consume, but how it is absorbed that counts. So we dare you to compare fish oil with K48 Plus. K48 Plus, an omega-3 powerhouse, is made with the highest grade and most potent dose of krill oil available, and is 48 times more easily absorbed than common fish oil. K48 Plus is both a remarkable anti-inflammatory as well as a powerful antioxidant. If you suffer from ailments such as diabetes, COPD, autism, arthritis, depression, migraines, lupus, Alzheimer's, glaucoma, joint pain, high cholesterol, memory loss, or Crohn's disease, you need to see the K48 Plus video at livepremium.net. That's LIVE premium.net. Or please call 208-521-3601. That's 208-521-3601 and ask about K48 Plus. Restore hope, optimize health with K48 Plus.
Hi, this is Nick Pope. You're listening to the Paracast.
With Gene and Chris and Goggs, we got Robert Hastings, author of UFOs and Nukes, joining us. And I presume you might have a comment about my last statement before the break.
Yeah, I've got one before Robert chimed in.
Chime in, Chris.
I would think that a sizable percentage of unidentified objects flying around Iran has a U.S., well, an invisible USA sticker on it.
The problem with Iran and North Korea is the same problem with China. They're closed societies. Westerners have very little access to information, certainly relating to sensitive matters such as UFO incursions, let's say near nuclear sites or military sites. So again, the same comment I made about China. I am aware of reports from both North Korea and Iran of UFO sightings. How credible those are, based on the articles I've read, they're not very credible reports. They're certainly not substantiated. While theoretically, I think, yeah, that's going on. The same thing with Israel. Israel, it's known, has a nuclear site in the Negev desert. Within the past 5 years, I think it was, there were reports in the New York Times of an object being sighted above this plant in the Negev desert. I know its name is just escaping me at the moment. But anyway, it's their principal nuclear site. And there were reports in the New York Times and other papers of a spherical-shaped object sighted hovering above this site. Demona, it's called. But the reports spun it, and this may indeed have been the case, that this was simply an errant balloon that got over the site. Based on the eyewitness descriptions, I think that's a less likely explanation, so this may have been a bona fide UFO, but apparently whatever it was shot down by Israeli jets because it had violated the sensitive airspace. So, again, to be redundant, theoretically, it's clear to me, I think, that anyone who has nukes is being monitored by UFOs. But finding reports in our own country, let alone a closed society like North Korea, is pretty tough. It's
virtually impossible, I would imagine.
Yep.
We have a lot of questions from our listeners, which they posted over at the question bank in the Paracast forum at forum.paracast.com. I know Robert is aware of most of those questions. We probably won't have time to ask all of them, but Chris will ask a short cross-section. Let's start with that right now.
Yeah, this is one that kind of sticks out to me, Robert. It does have to do with a researcher who has been, his work has been called into question, Phil Imbrogno. Of course, he is, one of his first books actually was quite popular and allegedly co-authored with J. Allen Hynek, who's already been mentioned in today's segment. But the book is called Night Siege. The event is the supposed UFO sighting and entity sightings at the Indian Point nuclear power station just north of New York City. What do you know about that particular case? And do you, like I do, have a sense that possibly details were embellished?
Multiple witnesses have independently reported that there was UFO activity at the Indian Point nuclear plant on the Hudson River back in the late 80s. So they've independently discussed this in newspapers and on television programs. I've seen witnesses who were driving up, this parkway along the river north home, and apparently one night, there were literally thousands of people who saw this thing because the traffic was so heavy. Cars were stopping, large numbers of cars were stopping. People were getting out and looking at this thing. Unfortunately, getting back to Philip Imbrogno, my understanding is there is no question that he forged both his military and his academic credentials. He has misrepresented himself thoroughly. My understanding of it, based on quite credible reports I've read online.
I'll tell you why a lot of those reports originated with one of our regular listeners, Lance Moody, who did his own independent investigation, and then when we started to look into it, we realized that what he said was true. A lot of what this guy says about his educational background, well, a lot of it is false.
That's my understanding. And there's another UFO radio talk show host whose name is escaping me at the moment. I've been on his program, who independently checked out this situation and confirmed that indeed Imbrogno had basically misrepresented completely his military and academic credentials. If you guys want to help me with his name, you know who I'm talking about, I think. He's a veteran. He's
Don Ecker. Don
Ecker. Yeah, he told me I had an email exchange. I went to him. I knew his veteran status. I knew his familiarity with various things that Imbrogno had said, and he told me point blank in an email exchange that, yep, I checked it out. It's all true. Imbrogno has fraudulently represented himself. So that indeed is unfortunate. But getting back to my earlier point, fortunately, talking about the incidents at the Indian Point nuclear power plant on the Hudson River in New York, Imbrogno is not the only source of information for those sightings.
So, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think in Night Siege, doesn't Imbrogno, or possibly Files from the Edge, one of his other books, doesn't he say something about entities being seen? Going through walls of buildings and that sort of thing. Do you recall any of that? Do you give it any credence?
I don't, actually. I read the book many years ago. I don't recall a specific reference to that. That's not to say that there wasn't one, but I don't recall.
Before we go on, let me tell our listeners what the Question Bank is all about. The Question Bank is an area of our forum at forum.theparacast.com. That is forum.theparacast.com. It gives you a chance to ask a question of a forthcoming guest. When we have enough warning, sometimes we don't. All you have to do is visit us, forum.theparacast.com, sign up, join the forums. It's free. Your email box won't be inundated with spam either. We protect the people who join our forums. Sign up and post your own questions.
Okay, well, we do have a lot of questions here in the question bank, and I'm glad that you've had a chance to answer a number of them. But do we have any independent confirmation of multiple missiles going offline? This is actually a question that Goggs wrote out. And I seem to remember and recall from your book that upwards of 50 missiles, I think, in one event may have been impacted by some sort of incursion. Where do you stand on the number of events that could have simultaneously occurred in, let's say, one flyover or one visitation?
Before the incident you just mentioned in October of 2010 at F.E. Warren Air Force Base, where apparently 50 missiles were affected, prior to that situation, which I'll discuss more in detail in a moment, I was unaware of any incident where more than 10 missiles in a given flight, those are 10 missiles controlled by a single launch control capsule, had been affected, had gone down all at once. There are multiple reports of that. The two best-known ones were at Echo and Oscar flight in March of '67 at Malmstrom Air Force Base, and I've got articles about that at my website. The incident at F.E. Warren was rather intriguing. I held this UFO and Nukes press conference on September 27th, 2010 at the National Press Club. CNN streamed it live. One can go to my homepage at ufohastings.com and see the full-length 63, I think it is, minute video that CNN streamed of the entire press conference. Not even a month later, on October 23rd, 2010, there was this report at the Atlantic website. It used to be the Atlantic magazine website. I don't know its proper name nowadays. A reporter named Mark Ambinder apparently got leaked information saying that the Air Force at F.E. Warren lost the ability to communicate with 50 of its missiles for 59 minutes was the story. However, given that I know about this ongoing activity at missile sites, we shortly thereafter made some inquiries, and I had actually retired Air Force missile targeting contact who had active duty contacts at F.E. Warren. Long story short, by late November, not even a month after the incident, I had reports from eyewitnesses that missile maintenance teams who were out in the field trying to ascertain why the base couldn't communicate with 50 of its missiles, 5 flights of missiles, 5 launch capsules. They could not communicate back and forth, could not, in effect, launch those missiles, could not be given the orders to. I got independent testimony from missile maintenance persons out in the field that a huge cigar-shaped object was sighted not only over a 59-minute period when the missiles were down, but during the next 2 days.
We have Robert Hastings, who will finish that answer in our next segment, because we got a lot more to cover. With Gene, Chris, and Goggs, you're in
the Paracast.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Whether it's personal mail, whether it's business email, you want reliable, dependable delivery, freedom from spam, freedom from viruses. Well, Polaris Mail offers professional email hosting services for your personal or small business use. Each account uses 25 gigabytes of storage, an easy-to-use webmail interface, and full mobile sync. Sign up today for a 30-day free trial at polarismail.com, polarismail.com. So here's what happened. I was placing an order online. The site went down. It just stopped responding. It took hours before it returned, but I'd already placed the order with another company. If your site goes down, you could lose business. And if you have a business or personal site, you'll want to know it's easy to run and it will stay online. At iWeb, your site is hosted on one of the most reliable networks in the world. Check it out. iWeb.com. That's iWeb.com.
What do you do when your propane runs out and you don't have a large amount of wood for cooking? That's when you need a Grover rocket stove from StockStorage.com. The Grover rocket stove starts easily with any combustible material like junk mail, small twigs, leaves, weeds, or dry sagebrush. Then just add a small amount of kindling wood and you'll be cooking entire meals in minutes. Grover rocket stoves are made right here in the USA and are built to last a lifetime using heavy-duty thick-gauge steel and are painted with high-temp paint to withstand heat. Go to StockStorage.com and see 3 great Grover rocket stoves, stainless steel, heavy duty, or our original Grover rocket stove for only $135 and get free shipping to the lower 48. For phone orders, call 801-361-6984 or go to StockStorage.com. That's 801-361-6984 or StockStorage.com. The original Grover rocket stove minimal wood use cooking stoves, available exclusively from StockStorage.com.
If you're going to have a bunker, why not have an ultimate bunker? In case of pandemic outbreak, civil unrest, biological or nuclear fallout, or EMP attacks, stay safe in your own ultimate bunker, built for lasting security for any need or budget. Manufactured in Salt Lake City, Utah, each ultimate bunker includes free food storage and all the comforts of home. Learn more at ultimatebunker.com. That's ultimatebunker.com, or call 801-661-3900. Ultimate Bunker. You can't do better than the ultimate.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
The government's Department of Homeland Security is buying up loads of ammo. At the same time, they're restricting civilians' rights to own and purchase firearms. Can you put two and two together? Infidel Body Armor can stop every round, including hollow points and .308 sniper rounds. Is reasonably priced and fully legal. But for how long? Go to InfidelBodyArmor.com, spelled INFIDEL bodyarmor.com. Infidel Body Armor. Just won't quit.
We the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit, then carting to a private bank, having it lent back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Hi, Ted Anderson. I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
This is Kurt Sutton, the author of UFO Mysteries, and you're listening to the Paracast.
With Gene and Chris and Goggs, we have Robert Hastings, author of UFOs and Nukes. Robert, you were in the middle of an answer there, and of course, commercial considerations forced us to break, but now you can continue an answer.
I was simply recapping what I know about the actual facts involving the incident on October 23rd, 2010 at F.E. Warren Air Force Base. After this story was broken by the Atlantic website by reporter Mark Ambinder that the Air Force had lost, allegedly for 59 minutes, the ability to communicate with 5 flights of missiles, 50 missiles. Therefore, in effect, bottom line, they could not be launched for that 59 minutes. I subsequently contacted someone who has been mentioned in my book who provided information about his own UFO incidents in the 70s at Ellsworth Air Force Base. The same individual had talked about made inquiries on my behalf of persons who were active duty missile maintenance personnel at F.E. Warren, who told him point blank that the teams that went out over a 2-day period, October 23, 24, 2010, to try to ascertain the problem, why this communication snafu was going on and how to repair it. Multiple teams came back to the base and reported seeing a huge silver-colored, dull, metallic gray, silver-colored, cigar-shaped object high above the missile field. And several teams independently came back and reported it. They said it did not have fins or a passenger gondola and no advertising on its side. It was not the Goodyear blimp. It was clearly a huge cigar-shaped object. These persons also told my retired missile targeting contact that the missile maintenance commander held a squadron-wide meeting and admonished the members assembled there not to talk to anyone about what they had, quote, the quote was, the things they may or may not have seen in the sky, quote unquote. So quite clearly something more went on than just a prosaic computer chip issue, which is what the Air Force is officially chalking that problem up to. So it's ongoing. That's the last mass, what it seems to be a mass shutdown based on witness testimony, eyewitness testimony. The one in Montana at Malmstrom this past fall in September 2012, I interviewed probably a dozen locals, civilians in Roy, Montana, who told me that shortly after UFOs were sighted around the Oscar flight missiles in September of last year, that suddenly there was a huge increase in the number of missile maintenance vans in the area around the town. The town is literally surrounded by missile sites, and also a dramatic increase in Air Force security police patrols. So coincidentally or not, at the same time, the civilians were reporting to the sheriff's office that they were seeing UFOs near missile sites. Suddenly, according to several people in Roy, Montana, there was a dramatic increase in Air Force activity at those missile sites.
Robert, if you can confirm that the power supply and the electronics for each of these missiles, I believe, is completely independent, so that if the power fails in one, it will not adversely affect the others. So myself and Chris were just making the point that for one missile to go down, that could go down for a number of reasons. But for two to go down simultaneously, the chances of that are pretty low. But for, several to go down, the odds just quickly become astronomical. And as Chris had says to me, regardless of the UFO question, just the fact of, say, 10 independent missiles going down all at once, even if the engineers don't believe a word of the UFO thing, they must be scratching their head thinking this just cannot happen. Mathematically, it's so unlikely. What can you say about that, Robert?
All of that is entirely accurate, and the missile maintenance people that I've talked to, the launch officers, the targeting people, have all said just that. The odds of 10 missiles going down at once is unheard of. I was on Larry King Live on July 18th, 2008, with Robert Jameson, and among other people. He was a missile targeting officer who responded to the Oscar flight shutdown, which we now know it took place on March 24th, 1967. That was Bob Salas's flight of missiles. Bob Jameson said point blank on Larry King they were told that UFOs had shut down the missiles and given instructions on what to do if they'd sighted a UFO out while they were out in the field, bringing them back online. He says right on Larry King, I believe, the odds, he walked into the job control room, and saw all 10 missiles lit up red at Oscar flight. All the other missile flights were bright green. So clearly all 10 missiles had gone down. And he said the odds of that happening are just, astronomically against it. Further, regarding the earlier incident at Echo Flight on March 16th, 1967. The Boeing engineer, Boeing is the chief contractor for the Minuteman missile system, the Boeing engineer in charge of the team sent to investigate why the Echo Flight went down 10 missiles at once, a man named Robert Kaminsky, wrote a letter to a researcher named Jim Klotz. In 1997, it's posted at my website, in which he said to Klotz that they found no prosaic cause for the loss of these 10 missiles. He said, this is Kaminsky saying to Klotz, he said that the Air Force came in and said, shut down your investigation. He said that was unprecedented. It never occurred before or after. And he said further that his liaison personnel, Boeing Air Force liaisons, told him that there were reports of UFO activity at the site when the missiles went down. And all of this, again, comes from the man who headed the engineering team that the Air Force tasked and Boeing tasked with investigating the incident. So it took many years for him to come clean about that. Maybe no one asked him, but he certainly went on the record in 1997 that this was a UFO-related shutdown.
Chris, we got lots more questions.
Oh, boy, do we. And this next one comes from probably the most creative of our posters here at forum.theparacast.com. Creative in terms of his name. He calls himself Yeti Turds for Sale. Not sure what to make of that, Robert, but moving right along. He has a number of interesting questions, which I'm going to ask through the remainder of our talk with you, but how many cases are you aware of in which the witnesses involved were physically affected in any manner? He says here, I'm thinking of the cases where experiencers displayed symptoms of radiation poisoning, the case where the guy had a burn mark on his body that was allegedly the pattern of some sort of exhaust grill. Are you aware, Robert, of any cases where missileers, security personnel, or others who may be at the site in the wrong place at the right time have been physically affected by some sort of flyover or interaction with the magnetic field or whatever that these objects allegedly produce?
Well, I'm racking my brain. I've been interviewing people since 73. The book that came out in 2008 had interviews with about 90 of them. I don't off the top of my head recall anything like that. On the other hand, there are two instances that have been reported, one at Malmstrom in 67 at Echo Flight, the other one at Ellsworth Air Force Base in 78, where the people involved, both of them were targeting technicians, trying to bring the missiles up in terms of reprogramming the targeting information in the guidance systems. In the case of Malmstrom, Bob Salas had a lengthy conversation with someone he calls Mr. X. This person said that he is not to be identified until his death, and therefore, even though I've worked with Bob Salas and we hosted this press conference together, I still do not know the identity of Mr. X. But Bob did check out his credentials. He was a targeter at Malmstrom. He was involved, by all accounts, in this Echo Flight, bringing it back up. What he said was, he told Bob Salas was, he was down doing his targeting work. The guard topside at ground level starts screaming for him to come up, and eventually he goes up to the ground level. He's down in the missile silo, the underground silo, and both of them see this glowing orange object, sort of disc-shaped, hovering, quote, not far out, that seemed to be sending out like waves of energy, almost you could feel on your body. They could feel on their body like it was what he called low-frequency waves, I believe the term was used. Oddly, very strangely, he did not feel frightened by it, even though the guard was freaking out, and he just went back down into the silo and continued his work. And he told Bob Salas that when he got to a certain point, something called the alignment of the collimator, in the process of restarting the missile, everything would crap out, and this happened repeatedly. And he said he had the very strong sense, whether it was telepathic or a hunch or who knows what, that they in the UFO were causing this. They were aware of the procedure in bringing up the missile. They knew where he was in the startup procedure, and they chose repeatedly at that point to indicate that they could shut down the restart process. That was this gentleman's interpretation of the event.
I'll tell you what, let's get into the finish of this in a moment. We have Robert Hastings, author of UFOs and Nukes, joining us this week, our special guest panelist, Goggs Mackay. You're on with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. If you'd like to listen to GCN programs on the go, I have great news. GCN has created a Droid and iPhone application, and it's free. Just as easy as going to GCNlive.com, click on the banner, and download. Before you know it, you'll be listening to your favorite hard-hitting GCN shows, live or on demand, right on your Droid or iPhone, 24/7 and on the go. So download the Droid and iPhone app free by clicking on the banner at GCNlive.com. Thanks again for listening to GCNlive.com. Again, that's GCNlive.com. We the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit and carting to a private bank, having it led back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Ted Anderson, I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
Gardeners, here comes another growing season, but don't use last year's soil. Maximize yields in your survival garden with EM1 from Terraganics. EM1 is an organic soil conditioner, fertilizer amendment, and compost accelerant that provides a broad spectrum of beneficial microorganisms, enzymes, trace minerals, vitamins, and various organic acids. EM1 helps regulate the soil's pH level and its soil microbes, improving moisture retention and drought tolerance. Remember last year's dry conditions? EM1 from Terraganics is safe, chemical-free, and certified for use on all organic farms. It It improves plant quality, size, color, flavor, and gives up to 20% more nutrient value in fruits and vegetables and greatly increases shelf life. And EM1 is so simple to use, just mix with water and apply. This year, prepare your crisis garden for maximum yields with EM1 from Terraganics.com. Order now at TERAGANIX.com or call toll free 866-369-3678. That's 866-369-3678. Terraganics. Life's getting better.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
Before we get back to our guests, I want to ask you something. Anybody out there want to work for the Paracast and our other show, the Tech Night Owl Live? Anyone? Well, we're looking for someone with the skills to sell radio ads and banner ads for the show on our sites. If you have that experience, and especially if you know how to work with social networks, if you have that wide range of experience, we want to talk to you further. You can write us, news@theparacast.com, news@theparacast.com. Please don't forget to send your resume, by the way, so we have a sense of your job experience. News@theparacast.com, news@theparacast.com. With Gene and Chris, with Goggs Mackay joining us as guest panelists, we have Robert Hastings. He is author of UFOs and Nukes, and his answers to the many questions are lengthy. And before we get on to more questions from our question bank at forum.theparacast.com, Robert, do you want to expand on that response or move on?
I'll just quickly say that the other incident that I alluded to a moment ago at Ellsworth Air Force Base in 1978, the missile targeting technician said that a diamond-shaped UFO, a four-sided UFO, was hovering low over his site. He felt these waves of energy streaming down, and again, despite this very horrific or frightening spectacle, he did not feel frightened, and he went back down and tried to retarget the missile. So you have virtually identical accounts of what is very odd behavior. The guards are freaking out, and yet the targeting techs are cool, calm, and collected and trying to restart the missile with a UFO hovering low over the sites. So that's kind of bizarre.
Well, I have a kind of a follow-up question to that, and this comes from my long association now with Ray Stanford. Ray, by the way, is real excited to tune in to listen to the show. He gave you quite a compliment. Ray is, to put it kindly, is quite the curmudgeon, and there's not many people in the field that he feels has any sort of relevance or credence, and you're one of them. And he's very excited that you're going to be on the show. And one of the things that Ray has kind of hinted around about and told me to always be aware of this is he calls it euphoria. There's some sort of ability for the human perception system, whatever that might be, from psychic to physical, that is oftentimes made aware of the presence of these objects prior to actually seeing them or being alerted to their actual presence. And he says it's kind of a euphoric sort of feeling that kind of overcomes you just before you actually have some sort of experience. And he thinks that may be some sort of physiological response to these objects. In all the 150, you've interviewed just dozens and dozens of people that have had experiences like this. Have you ever gotten a sense from any of them that they had a premonition or some sort of feeling beforehand prior to being alerted that there was some sort of incursion?
I am aware of cases not involving the missileers, the missile cases where people have reported that. It's in the literature, so I'm aware of that. I can't, off the top of my head, think of any report from any of my sources, all of these taped interviews, where that was presented to me or that claim was made. But there was the sense, this inference of some sort of telepathic communication, or certainly whoever was in the UFOs had the ability to influence the mental processes of these two technicians I just mentioned and suppress their emotions like fear. That seemed to be quite clearly implied by these two individuals. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Bob Salas, when he speaks publicly about his incident at Oscar, said that when he was down there trying to bring up the 10 missiles and, waking up his commander, Fred Mywald, and dealing with it, at some point, Bob apparently had this sense all of a sudden that these were beings from somewhere else and they were warning us not to use nukes. Now, again, it's sort of ephemeral. It's sort of that's not the right word. It's sort of unprovable whether that was a real telepathic input in Mr. Salas's head or whether that was just a hunch he had or who knows what. But those reports do continue to occur. I'll try to shorten my answers. I do like to be very specific and detailed and not just give off-the-cuff answers, but I know you've got lots of questions, so I'll try to be a little less wordy here.
Hey, Robert, this is Goggs. I'll come in here with a quick point. Do you know of any reports, really, of any associated high strangeness with any of these cases? I'm taking it you're familiar with the term high strange.
Yes. No, go ahead.
No, that was the question, yeah. Do you know of any associated high strangeness with any of these cases you've researched?
Well, two things come to mind.
Well, the Malmstrom cattle mutilations.
Well, there you go. You read my mind. The first thing that comes to mind are the reports of mutilated cattle in both not only Malmstrom, but the F.E. Warren missile field in the 1970s. In the fall of 75, there was something called the Northern Tier incursions. That's how they've been referred to historically, where there were a number of SAC, Strategic Air Command bases, where UFOs were interfering, or at least near the nuclear missiles at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana, and then at two nuclear bomber bases, Wurtsmith in Michigan and Loring in Maine. And in the case of Montana, during that same time frame, there were something like 80 cases, I believe, of cattle mutilations within the Malmstrom missile field. And I've interviewed both the Cascade County Sheriff, Keith Wolverton, who was involved with those investigations, and also the former commander of Malmstrom Helicopter Squadron, retired Lieutenant Colonel Robert Hastings, and both of them confirmed that the two of them had met together to try to compare notes, I guess, put their heads together and figure out what was going on. So there are these mutilations associated with some of the UFO incursions at missile sites. The other thing that comes to mind is I have two independent reports from missile security guards. I'd have to look at my notes to remember which bases were involved. One was Malmstrom. I don't remember the other, where they were out at a missile site. There was a tripped alarm. There was the inference of a UFO presence, but they didn't see UFOs. But they were on their way back to the base, and it took them a lot longer to get back to the base than it should have, and they were out of radio contact. So there was this inference of missing time, perhaps a close encounter like an abduction experience that these two former missile cops, Sky Cops, Missile Security Police, told me about independently. So I would certainly consider that a high incidence of high strangeness.
We've also had security personnel vehicles shut down inexplicably and then power back up. That should probably be
That's correct.
Noted as well. I really hate to get into this and give it any sort of attention, but I think it's important to look at some of the pushback and blowback pertaining to your work, and that is this James Carlson character and his dad Eric. I do have a couple of questions relating to that at the forum.theparacast.com, but I would like to just get a sense from you. First of all, maybe give just a quick overview of James Carlson's sort of vendetta. I mean, for the life of me, I don't know, what the motivation is here, but perhaps you might address James and his dad Eric's problems with your work and give us a sense possibly what the motivation could be, because your work is so well documented that it's really difficult to talk about the one or two people that have come out and said, well, this is all a bunch of BS and blah, blah, blah. Why don't you give us your thinking about James Carlson?
And I'll tell you, before we do that, we're going to have a break in a moment, and I'd rather give Robert a full segment to respond to this. It's a very complicated issue, as do any of these things end up or turn out to be. Listeners, on our next episode of the Paracast, we will feature author and investigative reporter Leslie Kean, and also Robert Halt, who, as you have just heard, was a key figure in the Rendlesham UFO case. Questions open in the question bank at forum.theparacast.com if you really want to participate. But today we're talking to Robert Hastings. He's author of UFOs and Nukes. Our guest panelist is Goggs Mackay with Gene and Chris. You're in the Paracast.
Is there a secret UFO agenda? Do strange creatures from the darkest corners of the mind roam the earth? Is there evidence for mind control, time travel, or devious government conspiracies? Find out the inside scoop on the latest conspiracies, paranormal activity, and Freudian phenomena when you subscribe to Tim Beckley's Conspiracy Journal. It's jam-packed with stories, special book and DVD promotions, and the best news, it's absolutely free, sent right to your mailbox. Plus, a bonus free email newsletter sent out every Friday. Simply send an email with your name and address to Mr. UFO at webtv.net. That's Mr. UFO at webtv.net. Find out what they don't want you to know.
Have you ever felt like the United States government knows way too much about your financial affairs? I continue to hear stories about property seizures, frozen bank accounts, confiscation of stocks and bonds. It makes me wonder if the U.S. citizen will ever again have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Unfortunately, with the Drug and Money Laundering Act, the IRS Revenue Ruling 6045 of 1984, and the Trading with the Enemy Act and Franklin D. Roosevelt's Executive Order of 1933, some precious metal holdings are subject to government intervention. For this reason, Midas Resources has prepared a report explaining the boundaries of trading precious metals privately. Whether if you have any intention of trading with Midas Resources or not, I have instructed my representatives to give this report out free. Call for your free copy at 1-800-686-2237. When investing, always proceed with caution. Again, call 1-800-686-2237. Exercise your legal right to trade metals privately. 1-800-686-2237.
You've seen them on Doomsday Preppers. You've seen them on network television, Shipping Wars, and the History Channel. Now, the strongest shelters money can buy are here. Atlas Survival Shelters. Made in America from 10-foot diameter galvanized corrugated pipe up to 11 times stronger than square box shelters and built to last up to 200 years. And you won't believe the amenities. Atlas shelters contain microwaves, refrigerators, big screen TVs, water tanks, septic systems, bulletproof hatches, and much more. Virtually everything you have at home, just buried 20 feet deep and bomb-proof. See the amazing Atlas Survival Shelters at atlassurvivalshelters.com or call 1-855-4BUNKER. That's 855-4BUNKER or atlassurvivalshelters.com. Financing now available. Atlas Survival Shelters. Better prepared than scared.
For centuries, silver has been used as a powerful natural antibiotic, and as a listener to this station, you probably already know the benefits of using colloidal silver. With so many websites to choose from, finding a reputable, patriotic company with great products at affordable prices can be a difficult task. Introducing UtopiaSilver.com. UtopiaSilver.com carries the best, most effective, and most affordable colloidal silver and colloidal gold products in the industry. UtopiaSilver.com also carries products to fit your lifestyle, including weight loss, immune system defense, cleanses, herbs, joint and bone care, and much more. First-time customers using promo code GCN50 will receive 50% off all colloidal products. Visit us today at Utopia Silver, that's UTOPIA Silver, utopiasilver.com, or call 888-213-4338. That's 888-213-4338. UtopiaSilver.com, taking back America's healthcare one American at a time.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
So, Robert Hastings joining us with Gene, Chris, and Goggs. Before we broke, Robert, you were asked a question about someone who doesn't like you very much and has been sharply critical of your work. So maybe you can give our listeners a background and a response.
What is now known, either through witness testimony or documents, is that there were two full-flight, what apparently were full-flight 10 missiles each, shutdown incidents at Malmstrom Air Force Base. The incident at Echo Flight was on March 16th, 67. The Oscar flight, I now have established, was 8 days later. 3 of the 4, in each case, in each launch capsule, you have 2 missile launch officers controlling missiles. And so in combined, the 2 cases, you have 4 missile launch officers. 3 of the 4 have confirmed a UFO presence. I have them on tape. Bob Salas has them on tape. Some of those tapes are at my website. The one holdout officer who won't admit that there was any UFO involvement is James Carlson's father, Eric, who was the commander at the Echo Flight site. Despite taped conversations, 3 hours worth at my website, where the deputy commander, now retired Colonel Walter Fiegel, confirms that he did indeed, despite what James Carlson claims to the contrary, Fiegel did receive a telephone call from a guard at one of the Echo sites in which he described a round object hovering directly over one of the sites. James has continually misrepresented that conversation. He's gone so far as to say that I've doctored the tapes. I'm offering, any audio expert access to the tapes, and if there's any evidence of fraud, those persons can find it. These people have to be, credible audio experts. I'm just not going to make this data available to Joe Blow. In any case, Colonel Fiegel has called James Carlson's statements, quote, off base. He's also said that James Carlson has, quote, an axe to grind. All of that's on tape. One can listen to it at my website in these conversations with that I had with Colonel Fiegel in 08, 09, and 2010. What is known about James Carlson is this. He has been diagnosed with epilepsy. His naval career was cut short. Because of that, he was medically discharged. I've done some reading online in which it's found or is discussed online. In some cases, persons with epilepsy have reality-detached behavior. They're not well grounded in what we would all collectively call reality. Another characteristic described in some of the articles I read online are manic behavior. If you look at James Carlson's 2,000-word blog post with no breaks, no paragraph breaks, just a wall of words, at hundreds of sites over the last 5 years, one could say that's manic behavior. So I don't know if James' diagnosed problems, self-admitted brain condition, epileptic-related problems, are the origin for his inability to grapple with the truth, the facts, or whether he's, just an unethical person because he continually represents the witness's tape testimony. I don't know what the bottom line is. All I know is that if one looks at what he says, reads what he says, and then compares with what the witnesses actually say on tape, available at my website, you'll see it's day and night, and that Carlson misrepresents what the eyewitnesses said.
I think that kind of sums it up well. I had no idea that James Carlson had been discharged from the Navy because of medical conditions, as you described. That may go.
I read it on his own blog.
That goes a long way in my mind to maybe describe what is clearly manic behavior. Well, moving right along, actually, Robert, as quite a compliment to your work, that would be the only detractor that I have ever even heard about, let alone had any sort of information about, and that in this field, which is filled with infighting and detractors, that's to be as Teflon as you've been over the years is quite a testament to your meticulous documentation, and I want to be the first to congratulate you on such a fine job that you've done over the years, and really dotting your I's and crossing your T's. And if that's the only logjam in the works, I don't even think it should be there. But anyway, moving along. Another question we have here.
Well, before we move along, let me interject one other point here. First of all, I consider myself merely the messenger for these witnesses, these ex-military people, are the people who deserve public praise. I'm just driven to do what I do. I can't explain why, but I'm trying to do as good a job as possible. But I'm just the messenger for people who are involved in these incidents. Now, the other thing I'll quickly say is Carlson, is unique in terms of the nature of his criticisms and the complete misrepresentation of taped audio evidence and all that. I mean, he's just totally out in left field. But there are debunkers, there are skeptics, and what I would like to quickly say is the chief skeptic group used to be called PsyCop. It's now called CSI. The late Philip Klass was its leading UFO debunker. James Oberg is another one. They publish a magazine called Skeptical Inquirer. The editor of that magazine is Kendrick Frazier. And some 25 years ago, when I went out on the lecture circuit, shortly after I went out, I began investigating why this group was so adamantly anti-UFO and misrepresenting the facts. And what I found was this, all my material deals with nuclear weapons related cases. What I found out pretty quickly was the editor, longtime editor of Skeptical Inquirer magazine, Kendrick Frazier, worked for over 20 years as a public relations specialist for Sandia National Labs, one of the leading nuclear labs in the U.S. You can look high and low, and you won't find that in that magazine. And yet that is a fact, and I published that fact in my book. James Oberg, who is a debunker of UFOs, claims publicly they don't exist. There's no cover-up. When a man named Bob Jacobs, Dr. Bob Jacobs, leaked information about the so-called Big Sur case, the apparent shoot down of a dummy nuclear warhead by a UFO that was all captured on film, according to Jacobs and another Air Force officer named Major Florence Mansman. James Oberg privately wrote to Jacobs and chastised him for releasing, quote, top secret UFO data is the exact phrase that appeared in Oberg's letter to Jacobs. Wow. Now, apparently, quite at variance to his public persona as a UFO debunker. Apparently, Oberg thought that, he would be intimidated. Jacobs would, shrivel up and crawl back into a hole or something. Jacobs published portions of that letter and just exposed Oberg's duplicity. He also was written to by Philip Klass, who said quite intentionally, I can provide references, Dr. Jacobs, of my credibility as a UFO researcher. And he named as references Admiral Bobby Inman and General Daniel Graham, who have had various jobs with CIA and NSA over the years. So again, it was quite clearly an effort to attempt to intimidate Dr. Jacobs into silence after he broke the Big Sur UFO story. Jacobs, again, being Bob Jacobs, God bless him, he threw it back in their face and published Klass's letter where he was citing as references, two of the top intelligence officers in the U.S. government after decades of denying that he was a government agent. So when you look behind the scenes, if you kind of lift the cover on this particular group of, quote, skeptics, you find all this BS going on. So quite clearly, these guys are more than they appear to be, more than they attempt to present themselves as.
Oh, we can't have too much of that. We have Robert Hastings joining us. He's author of UFOs and Nukes. There's so much more to come with Gene, Chris, and Goggs. You're in the Paracast.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKEsoft.com. Lemkesoft.com. LEMKEsoft.com.
Are you still a traditional smoker? Now experience a new lifestyle and try vaping with e-cigarettes by LeSig. Imagine no ashes, stains, nasty smell, or coughing and hacking. With LeSig e-cigarettes' revolutionary microelectronic technology, rechargeable battery, and unique replaceable cartridge, you'll get all the benefits and satisfaction of smoking without the hazards. Choose your taste from a wide variety of our new American-made vape-free e-liquids at LeSig.com. And LeSig smokes the competition by serving thousands of worldwide customers with real people customer service, fast, free, same-day shipping, and a 30-day warranty and satisfaction guarantee. So are you ready for a new vaping lifestyle? Then call 870-518-4307. That's 870-518-4307. Or visit LeSig.com, spelled LECIG.com. LeSig e-cigarettes for today's modern smoker.
Being prepared against possible food shortages and economic collapse is not complicated. Just remember 2 words: disaster stuff. Add .com after those 2 words and you've got just one site for all your preparedness needs. Disasterstuff.com prepares your family against food shortages with Linden Farms freeze-dried foods in buckets or Gourmet Reserves freeze-dried food in numbered 10 cans, both with free shipping. Purify and rid your water of contaminants with a Big Berkey or other Berkey system and get free shipping, plus a water level spigot or fluoride filter at cost. And protect your radios and other electronics from EMPs with our EMP Faraday bags, starting at just $5.90. When the food shortages and economic instability happens, be ready with all your stuff from disasterstuff.com. Just remember 2 words: disasterstuff.com. Freedom through self-reliance and personal responsibility.
Hello?
Congratulations.
For what?
For losing all that weight. How'd you do it so fast?
ASAP.
ASAP what? What's that mean?
Are you ready to get as skinny as possible, as soon as possible, as simple as possible, and as sexy as possible?
I'm listening.
Then get with the ASAP program. It's real and it works. No smooth talk, no slick advertising, and no exaggerated claims of success.
I've got to know more.
Welcome to ASAP, as slim as possible. Whether you have 10, 20, or 50 pounds to lose, ASAP is your weight loss answer. ASAP targets the abnormal fat reserves and makes them available to be burned as fuel and contains no caffeine or hormones. Order ASAP at wholesale prices or join the team to share the business with others. Visit GCNteam.com or call 877-878-4203. GCNteam.com or call 877-878-4203. Lose weight and look great with ASAP, as slim as possible.
This is Jerome Clark, author of the UFO Encyclopedia and other books. You're listening to the Paracast.
With Gene and Chris and Goggs, final 2 segments of the Paracast. The book under discussion is UFOs and Nukes, which you can get from Robert Hastings' site, www.ufohastings.com. There's a link to it at our site at theparacast.com. Chris, loads of questions in the question bank. Would you proceed?
Robert, this is a really good question, and it's one that, it makes a lot of sense. I've never actually thought about this, but perhaps you can shine some light on this particular subject. This comes from our longtime poster, Blowfish, at forum.theparacast.com, and it's the following. Robert, how many accounts of military aircraft have been seen, or military aircraft carrying nuclear weapons? Do we have any sort of reports of UFO activity interested in those flights?
Let me devote about 30 seconds to following up on what Gene just said about my book. It is self-published. It is available at my website, ufohastings.com, for $23.95, 600-page book. Now, scalpers buy it and resell it on Amazon for $85. So if you have deep pockets, go straight to Amazon. If you want to be sensible about this, go straight to my website and order the book. Your question related to UFO activity near military aircraft carrying nuclear weapons. I am aware of a handful of cases. I'm sure there are a great many more. However, one of them that has come to light was presented publicly by Barry Greenwood and Larry Fassett in their book Clear Intent. It was really the first book devoted to nuclear weapons UFO activity. It was published, I believe, in 1981. Anyway, in Clear Intent, they cite Keith Wolverton, the then sheriff of Cascade County, describing information relating to a sighting of a B-52 coming in on a bomb run. There's a site northwest of Great Falls called Freeze Out Lake where they do simulated bomb runs. B-52s come in low and open their bomb bay doors and all that. And apparently a Fish and Game employee saw one of these maneuvers, and a small glowing globular-shaped object, a ball of light, came and suddenly attached itself to the aircraft momentarily and then raced away. And according to Keith Wolverton, contacts he had at the base said that the aircraft's radar went haywire when this object apparently attached itself to the bomber. I'm aware of a handful of other reports. I find it interesting, the missileers, the nuclear missile people, talk to me more often than not, whereas the bomber pilots or the B-52 crews just really don't want to have anything to do with me, and I'm not sure why that is, but they're very suspicious of my intentions. I get very few of them to open up about incidents involving UFO activity, during B-52 sorties or whatever. There is recently, and I'm trying to get this person to go on the record, there was a report in MUFON about 2 years ago from a man who was a security policeman at Ramey Air Force Base in Puerto Rico during the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of '62, who said this disc-shaped object in sort of a cloud, a plasma cloud, appeared over the base, hovered over the B-52 alert area where the loaded, nuclear weapons bombers were already poised for takeoff, hovered over the alert area, and then moved on to the U-2 spy plane hangar before moving away. Now, I've done some cursory checking. I think that story is legitimate, and so you would have another case involving UFO activity at a bomber base. That's news to me, boy. That's very interesting.
These Montana cases keep coming back here, and of course, I'm doing a book right now on the cattle mutilation phenomenon and actually humankind's relationship with cattle. And Montana does figure prominently in this. And, thank you very much for reminding me to really dig extra deep in some of these cases. You've really kind of put a bee in my bonnet about this. I think having attendant phenomena like cattle mutilation cases or reports, I should say more accurately, around Malmstrom and other bases where these potential incursions or whatever you want to call them, flyovers and manipulation of electronic gear on missile sites. I mean, it just makes you wonder about agendas, and there's a number of questions on the forum here about what the possible agendas are. And one thing that's always struck me is if we're dealing with something that's extraterrestrial that's coming here and sort of, as you put, wagging their finger at us, that's one thing. But if we're dealing with something that may have been here as long as we have, I would think that nuclear weapons and the possibility of irradiating the planet would put them in jeopardy as well. What are your thoughts about some other tenant in the building possibly being interested in these sites and showing up? What is your thinking on that? I mean, are you an ETH guy? You don't really kind of mention, extraterrestrials or the word alien. You're very conservative, I guess, in how you language a lot of these accounts and reports. What are your personal feelings? Do you think we're dealing with something off planet?
My personal opinion, based on having studied this for 40 years, is that these are ETs, beings from other worlds. There's anecdotal data I confine to discussing sightings by law enforcement personnel all over the world since 1954 who are out on patrol, come around a bend in the road, see a landed craft with little beings walking around it, or beings of one description or another. And there are literally hundreds of cases of cops of all descriptions in worldwide reporting landed craft with little entities walking around them. If one considers, that those cases have merit as opposed to being totally nonsensical, cops have everything to lose and nothing to gain by reporting something like that, and yet it's continually reported. What is described from case to case to case are a diversity of morphologies. You have 7-foot tall beings, you have 3-foot tall beings, you have human-looking beings, you have insect-looking beings. So, in my opinion, we have multiple races visiting this planet. How they get here, what their overall plan is, who the heck knows. The other important thing, and I've got a whole chapter in my book devoted to what's called higher dimensional space, hyperspace, which has now gained a great deal of acceptance in physics, professional physics circles. There are over 100 peer-reviewed papers in scientific journals at the time my book came out in 2008, where various physicists and mathematicians are discussing ways that faster than light travel can be achieved, whether it involves folding space, going through wormholes, whatever the theories are. For the first time in human history, 100 years into the Einstein era, where he said nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, over the last 20 years, that supposedly unshakable dictum is now being challenged by professional scientists and saying, in their papers where they say, yeah, there are ways that conceivably one could travel faster than light. So if we assume these are ET visitors, one assumes that some of them are more advanced than us and figured out what we're just now cutting our teeth on probably 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 1,000,000 years ago. If these are multiple races, they may or may not interact with each other. Some of them may just be slightly ahead of us, let's say 100 years in technology. Some could be 1,000,000 years ahead of us. So one has to take all that into account. There are also intriguing reports of hyperspace, for example, and other theories allow for multiple parallel dimensions other than our space-time universe. There are reports where seemingly the sky opens up, there's a hole, and then a craft emerges from it, suggesting almost like moving from one dimension to another. So, in my view, that's what's going on. Who knows when this is going to be proven, beyond any doubt for all humankind to accept the fact that this is real and here and happening. But I think that's my assessment of it.
Well, it stated the way you just stated it, yes, I would agree that it does appear to be something off planet. However, having, recently written a book about the tricksterish nature of these sorts of things and how appearances often are deceiving, I think there is a possibility that we're being led to believe that we are dealing with something off planet.
I'll tell you what, we are also led to believe that we have benefactors who want to talk about what they have to provide for us. We have Robert Hastings joining us with Gene, Chris, and Goggs. You're in
the Paracast.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
If you want to get your website online and you need reliable service, first-class service at the lowest possible price, there's only one place to go. Well, DreamHost has a special promotion with our show where they'll offer you unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, one-click web apps such as WordPress, 24/7 support. You can save over $55. You want to know how? Go to dreamhost.com/radio, dreamhost.com/radio. Whether it's personal mail, whether it's business email, you want reliable, dependable delivery, freedom from spam, freedom from viruses. Well, Polaris Mail offers professional email hosting services for your personal or small business use. Each account uses 25 gigabytes of storage, an easy-to-use webmail interface, and full mobile sync. Sign up today for a 30-day free trial at polarismail.com, polarismail.com.
HempUSA.org has a revolutionary wonder food for detoxing the body and rebuilding the immune system. Microplant powder can help unclog arteries and soften heart valves while removing heavy metals, virus, fungus, bacteria, and parasites. Plus, it cleans and purifies the blood, lungs, stomach, and colon. Keep your body clean with Microplant powder. Order today at 888-910-4367 or visit HempUSA.org.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
What's safer and cheaper than prescription drugs?
Glad you asked. The answer is Renovation Teas. Herbal remedies are much safer and much cheaper than prescription drugs. Taste great, and most importantly, herbal teas are effective and non-addictive. Renovation Tea is especially unique, and here's why. We spent years researching herbs and their beneficial properties. Renovation Teas uses only 100% organic, fair trade herbs. Our teas are blended towards specific ailments and health conditions, such as diabetes, blood pressure, anxiety, libido, detox, and much more. All Renovation Teas are formulated and hand-filled in Arkansas. Take care of yourself naturally, the way Mother Nature intended. Order Renovation Teas at renovationtea.com or call 870-784-3121. That's 870-784-3121. Renovation Teas. Renovate your health one bag at a time.
If you suffer seasonal or environmental allergies and your doctor has told you that the only answer is medications for the rest of your life, Dr. Peter Glidden has an alternative solution that doesn't involve drugs with terrible side effects.
One of my favorite add-on products to the 90 essential nutrients for people who are suffering with allergies is a product called Cell Shield RTQ. Cell Shield RTQ. The Q in that product stands for a biochemical called quercetin, and quercetin is a natural antihistamine. It doesn't flag out your immune system like antihistamines do.
To manage your allergies without a lifetime of prescription or over-the-counter drugs, order Youngevity's Cell Shield RTQ today by calling 855-347-3696. That's 855-347-3696 or on the web at fireyourmdnow.com. That's fireyourmdnow.com.
Hello, this is Rosemary Ellen Guiley, and you're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
With Gene, Chris, and Goggs on the Paracast, we have Robert Hastings, author of UFO and Nukes. Let me remind you then that the best place to buy Robert's book is at his site. We do have a link over at theparacast.com, so you go there to buy the book. This way, the scalpers do not profit. This way, all the money goes to him, and that's the way to do it. In any case, Chris raised a particular point of view about the UFO phenomenon and possible causes. Robert, you want to get into that?
I'm aware of what is called the trickster phenomenon, where there seems to be some sort of deception going on. Has been reported in cultures. For example, I've lived in the Southwest for the last 25 years, and where possible, where it's feasible for me to do it, I engage in discussions with Native Americans of one tribe or another about their views on all of this, and they all have trickster myths about entities doing things that fool humans into thinking one thing or another. I think that's what Chris is alluding to. Some of these Indian tribes, I'll quickly say, are their collective wisdom about what we would call UFOs is held as a closely guarded secret, and they do not discuss it with outsiders. And these people I've raised the issue with very politely tell me just that. Other tribes, in particular the Navajo, I've talked to another number of Navajo people who say quite openly, we know about UFOs. People of my grandfather's generation think they're spiritual beings, but people of my generation, guys in his 30s or whatever, think they're beings from other worlds. And there's really no hard and fast prohibition to having either view within the tribe, is what I've been led to believe. So it's a multifaceted phenomenon, and I've confined myself to the nuts and bolts cases where you have radar data. Hopefully you have multiple eyewitnesses, you have apparent physical effects, in terms of weapons being shut down when these objects are present. But, I'm aware, and my personal reading of the topic and communicating with other human beings is this is a very complex problem. We're not going to get to the bottom of what we call UFOs are anytime soon.
Yeah, Robert, it's Goggs here. Is your research in nukes and UFOs ongoing? And if not, what other areas do you research regarding UFOs?
It is ongoing. This may or may not be a good thing, but when I get up in the morning, it's on my mind. When I go to bed, it's on my mind. And I think if I'm going to make any meaningful contribution to the collective knowledge base, I need to confine myself to this particular subtopic. I think it's important, obviously, given the recent history of humankind, where we now have weapons that can take us out and destroy the environmental integrity of the planet for a long time. I think this is a very significant aspect to why we have UFO activity to the degree that we do in the last 70 years. So I think that's a large enough plateful right there to deal with for any one person, so I devote my time to that. It is ongoing. I'm 63 now. I'm slowing down. I can't sit at the computer or make calls for 8 hours a day every day like I used to, but I'm still digging into it, and it's endlessly fascinating. When I post press releases, when I'm on CNN or do programs like this one, I invariably get contacted by people who are ex-military. Every now and then I get some jerk who's a liar, and he's quite quickly exposed as a liar, but most of those people are sincere and have something to tell me, and I encourage them to contact me at UFO Hastings at AOL.com, UFO Hastings at AOL.com. Very quickly, if there's a veteran who wants to talk to me, I will say, I'm going to need your DD-214 to verify that you were at the bases you said you were at those time frames when you described your UFO experiences to me. But once we get beyond that, I'm very interested in what you have to say.
Just before Goggs comes in with another comment, are you contacted by people who claim to have military experience but don't?
Rarely, as I said a moment ago. Yeah, there are people who I can tell just right off. I know within 30 seconds whether something's not right in the way they word their emails to me or they present themselves. And when I push quickly, they run away. The bona fide sources pursue contacts with me. They're very understated. As a general rule, if someone calls me and says, I know what the CIA talks to the NSA and the White House about, blah, blah, blah. When someone contacts me and has grandiose claims about having oversight knowledge of the whole UFO government cover-up, quite clearly those people don't know what they're talking about or are making that up. The situation is so compartmentalized that if you're in on part of the secret, that's all you know. You don't know the overall picture. So those people are quite foolish if they think they can mislead me with claims such as those. The people who turn out to be the legitimate sources, the ones that have ended up in my book, are very low-key. They're understated. They don't make claims that they can't prove. They say, this is what I do know. I don't know that. They give very specific details, generally, if not the year of the case, certainly who was involved, what missile sites were involved, and so on. So it's pretty quickly clear to me who is worth pursuing in terms of a potential lead as opposed to who is just somebody trying to pull a fast one on me.
Robert, it's quite timely that you gave your contact details there. The question I was going to ask is, how much of your research is active and how much is passive? As in, how much do you have to go out looking for stuff, and how much does stuff come and find you, because people know what you're into?
I don't know that I could quantify that. It's a little of both. I, for example, had just read something online about sightings in Montana last fall. I was speaking at the University of Montana in October, and so I drove a couple 100 miles up to the areas where the missile sites are and found this log in the sheriff's blotter and subsequently interviewed the witnesses. So, I took an active hand because the opportunity presented itself. I don't have the financial wherewithal to fly all over the country pursuing one lead or another, but if an opportunity like that presents itself, I'll certainly pursue it. But again, as I mentioned earlier, in that case from last fall up in Montana, my witnesses are civilian personnel, civilians living in the area of Roy, Montana. I don't have military personnel coming forward yet, and I don't encourage active duty Air Force personnel to approach me because my emails are monitored, my phone's tapped. There's no question. I mean, if the guys in Washington have any brains, they've kept a good eye on me for the last 30 years. There have been some funny monkey business on the telephone I could tell you about if there's time, but so I don't encourage active duty people to approach me. I'm very curious to know what happened up there at Oscar Flight in September and October of 2012, but it could be decades before any of those guys come forward, and I'll be long gone.
So how do you think people react with regard to the story that, and we mentioned at the beginning of our show, that the government went after the AP for alleged leaks that might relate to some kind of military whistleblower?
I'm aware of the story. I just saw it on CNN earlier today. I don't know what to say. And it's nothing is black or white. I think there are legitimate cases where any given administration has to know. For example, a terrorist-related leak, I don't have a problem with them nosing into that. On the other hand, the Constitution does guarantee privacy, and so the people that argue, such as myself, who've had problems with telephone issues and email issues quite clearly, someone monitoring my activities, constitutionally there is a question whether anyone should have the right to do that. So it's pushed back and forth, it's give and take, and it's not cut and dried by any means.
Robert, tell our listeners where they can get more information about what you do.
My website is ufohastings.com. On the homepage, there is this CNN streaming of my press conference. You'll see 7 Air Force veterans talking about UFOs, monitoring, and even tampering with nuclear weapons. If you go to my documents page, you'll find a number of documents corroborating UFO activity at nuclear weapons sites since the 1940s. Onward, and if you go to my book page, you can order my book directly from my site without having to pay exorbitant rates at Amazon when scalpers try to resell it.
Okay, you can find us at theparacast.com. On Twitter, we are the Paracast, and we have a Paracast fan club over at Facebook. Chris' site is OurStrangePlanet.com. So we've had Goggs Mackay as our guest panelist with Gene Steinberg and Chris O'Brien. Robert Hastings, thanks for joining us this week on the Paracast.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
The Paracast, featuring Gene Steinberg and Christopher O'Brien, is a copyrighted presentation of Making the Impossible, Incorporated. Tune in next week for a new adventure in The Paracast.